Me this morning. I'll be back on Friday morning from 1 a.m. I hope you can join me then. Let's now join Harry Benjamin and the team for commentary of the 2026 Australian Grand Prix.
Thank you very much, Laura. Formula One is back. Welcome to Melbourne, Australia. The sun is shining over Albert Park as we get set for the first race of the 2026 season. After months of waiting, the talking stops and the racing begins. And this year, everything is different. Brand new regulations, smaller and lighter cars, completely new power units, and a fresh approach to energy management. It's the biggest reset Formula One has ever seen. And today, we get our first proper look at who's got it right and who's got work to do. There are new teams on the grid, new drivers in the paddock, and plenty of unanswered questions as 22 cars prepare to launch into a brand new era of the sport. This is 5 Live F1, and we're just under half an hour away from lights out on the new season. It's Harry Benjamin with you up in the commentary box, and alongside me is the former McLaren mechanic Mark Priestley. And Mark, the drama has already begun with one car out before we've even started proceedings here, and it's the home hero, Oscar Piastri.
Yeah, there's a huge number of very disappointed Australian fans in this grandstand wearing the green and yellow to support their home hero, and it was on the lap to the grid before the race got underway that Oscar Piastri in the McLaren came through turn 5. He dropped a wheel onto the curb, perhaps it unsettled it a tiny little bit, got on the throttle, shifting through the gears. He lost traction and the car just spun round into the barriers, and it was a heavy hit, and he'll take no further part in this Grand Prix.
To the groans of all the fans that pack out the grandstands here, let's introduce you to our pit reporter Jenny Gow. Jen, you were down on the grid when it happened. What's the reaction like where you are?
Oh, one of such sadness. I think everyone was so hopeful Oscar Piastri would go out there and break the curse of Australia, because we're so used to big successful names who are Australian trying to win, but they can't. And all of the fans here are pretty much wearing Oscar Piastri hats, Oscar Piastri shirts, and they were playing a compilation of crashes from last year, and then suddenly cut the feed and showed Oscar Piastri in the wall, and everyone thought it was just the feed from last year until it's flashed up saying live replay, and then the whole crowd was just shocked. You could hear a sigh of disbelief, even people crying. They're so upset that their home hero won't take to the track. And besides that, the rest of the teams are going through the motions, preparing. It's a very busy grid, but there's still shock and disbelief of what's happened.
Yeah, it certainly is. Thank you, Jenny. And well, there will be a gap on the grid then when we start this race at the top of the hour. Oscar Piastri was due to line up 5th in his McLaren, but is now out of the first race of the year and his home race of the year. And that is just the beginning of some of the complexities that all of the teams and drivers are having to get their heads around. We really are stepping into the unknown. Let's bring in the BBC's F1 correspondent, Andrew Benson. And Andrew, I wonder if you could just highlight how big a moment this is for F1 as we are entering this new era.
Well, Harry, literally everything is new. Cars, engines, tyres, fuel. And all winter, all weekend as well, people have been talking about the difficulties of operating these cars and their hybrid engines with the 50-50 split between internal combustion and electrical power to the optimum. And many people didn't do that yesterday. In fact, probably only one person did. He's the man on pole by 0.3 of a second from his teammate and 0.8 from anybody else. That's George Russell. We really don't know what to expect. People are using the word weird quite a lot for what the racing might look like. That's because of cars being potentially without their battery at certain points where others have it. If that's the case, 450 horsepower is lacking from the car that loses its battery compared to the one that has a full charge. That gives you an idea of the sort of craziness that could go on. We just don't know what's going to happen. It's got to the point where we're not even discussing tyres, Harry.
Well, don't you worry about that, Andrew. We'll get to tyres, don't you worry. Right, Jenny is down on the ground for us as the grid continues to ramp up. Let's head down to her.
Right, I'm here with Zach Brown, CEO of McLaren. Not the start you wanted, Zach, I'm so sorry, but talk us through what happened and your feelings.
Not a great way to start, but we now need to focus on the race. We haven't seen anything on the data yet, but right now we just got to focus on Lando.
what blow is this to you? Not only do you lose his chance to go in front of his home audience, but obviously you also lose the data, the learning, all of that stuff.
Is what it is.
You're very good at this, but it must be a disappointment for all of you.
Yeah, of course. But nothing we can do about it now. We got a race to run, so we'll focus on the car we got in the race.
So, focusing on the car you got in the race, Lando Norris, the reigning world champion, just pulled into his bay. What are you hoping, expecting? How easy is this going to be?
It's never easy. Not sure what to expect. Hoping for a podium.
Okay, Zach, I'm so sorry. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
CEO of McLaren, Zak Brown, speaking there. One driver down. Lando Norris will take to the grid from 6th spot. The reigning champion will have the number 1 on his papaya McLaren. McLaren, Mark, powered by Mercedes, and so much talk will be on the engine, the power units, this near 50-50 split that we now have between internal combustion and battery power. With that comes a whole heap of new terminology, which we'll explain as we go and as it crops up, because it can get a bit complicated. But the bottom line is, it seems like Mercedes have absolutely nailed this from the very start.
Yeah, and I think, you could go back to 2014, which was the last big power unit sort of revolution in this sport, and Mercedes back then did an incredibly good job at the same time. And it's partly because they get the opportunity to completely conceptualise and design the entire power unit and the car together. Now, of course, they're not the only team on the grid that can do that. Ferrari have the same opportunity. Likewise with Audi, a new team on the grid this year. But what they've done is managed to integrate that incredibly well. And that means that, like you said, McLaren using the same power unit, but we're still a long way, a second behind the works Mercedes when it came to qualifying. So this is really a story about how Mercedes have got the design right, but also the way it's integrated, the learning, the understanding of how best to utilise it. And so far, they are streaks ahead of everybody, at least over a lap. We're yet to see what happens in the longer runs of race day.
Well, with that Mercedes power and a strong all-round package, George Russell will line up for his 8th career pole position in Formula One. The grandstands are absolutely packed here around this 5.2 kilometre parkland circuit. The trees that frame Albert Park swaying gently in the light breeze, the Aussie sunshine peeking through the clouds. Nice conditions then to go racing as drivers make their final preparations before they head into the car. Now, something that's just flashed up on our screens, Andrew, just seen that Nico Hülkenberg in the Audi might be under investigation for some sort of starting procedure infringement. What have you spotted?
Well, there was certainly that, but more concern, I think, Harry, was that there were a bunch of mechanics surrounding one of the Audi cars, which I assume was Hülkenberg, because the next shot was him standing on the grid looking concerned, blocking the view of the cameras, obviously with the bodywork off the car. Now, with 20 minutes to go, that basically signifies there's some kind of problem on that car. Don't know what, though.
A little bit of insight is because we saw his onboard on the way to the grid, and around halfway through the lap, sitting on the onboard, he got the red flashing lights on his dashboard. He seemed to lose power and began to coast all the way round. Other cars began to overtake him, so he clearly had a problem halfway round that lap, and he coasted towards the back of the grid. Actually couldn't make it as far as the grid, which is why we saw him sort of abandoning the car some way back, and those mechanics having to leave the grid, come all the way back further down that start-finish straight to try and rescue him.
Yeah, it's worth mentioning at this point, actually, that people watching Formula 1, we've got used to cars running incredibly reliably. Sometimes the entire field finishes the Grand Prix if no kind of incident happens. That's not expected to be the case today. These cars, although theoretically the engine technology has been simplified compared to last year, actually the complexities involved in the energy management and so on, the bigger power of the MG UK, the recovery and deployment device on the rear axle, which is 350 kilowatts, 450 horsepower or so, it's proving to be quite difficult for the teams to get on top of. Aston Martin, we all know, has very well publicised the problems that they've had with their Honda engine, but everyone on the grid is struggling with reliability. This is just one example. A lot of people in the pit lane are predicting that there could be retirements this week, this afternoon, I should say, and as a consequence, safety cars.
Well, Andrew, we've been discussing a little before the commentary box, before we came in here, about how many we think might finish this race. If you put a number on it?
Well, I was just having lunch with a couple of people from one of the teams, and they were saying about 12. So I'll go with that.
Producer Paddy had 12. I had 14. Mark, what are you going for?
15. I was being optimistic.
Yeah. Well, look, two Aston Martins, we can probably rule them out from the start, right?
Yeah.
Hulkenberg's looking dodgy already.
We've already lost Piastri.
And Mercedes look like imperious in terms of Russell's qualifying lap yesterday, which was just gobsmacking in its superiority compared to the rest of the field. But Mercedes themselves, who are renowned for the reliability of their engines over the past 15 years or so, even they're struggling with reliability. So, I mean, it could be less than that, it could be more, obviously, but that's the sort of situation everyone's in.
I think there are so many unknowns, even for the teams. They've had 2 test weeks in Bahrain. Effectively, that's it. They did a shakedown in Barcelona as well, most of them, but limited amounts of running.
Well, we're nearly ready for the first race of the season. Drivers standing at the front of the grid, ready. The Australian national anthem, which will blare out across Albert Park here in Melbourne in just a few moments' time. 22 drivers this season, 11 teams with Cadillac joining the fray, and it all starts right here in Australia for round 1 of 24 of the 2026 Formula 1 World Championship. This is 5 Live F1, and we are on standby for the first national anthem of the year in Australia.
Australians, all let us rejoice, for we are one and free. We've golden soil and wealth for toil. Our home is goodbye sea. Our land abounds in nature's gifts of beauty, rich and rare. In history's page, let every stage advance Australia fair. In joyful strength and let us sing. Advance Australia
The Australian national anthem, sung by pop singer-songwriter Keita Alexander, rains out over Albert Park, and proceedings now start to speed up ahead of the first race of the season. This is 5 Live F1 with myself, Harry Benjamin, former McLaren mechanic Mark Priestley with me in the commentary box. We'll also be joined by the BBC's F1 correspondent Andrew Benson, and our reporter down on the ground is Jenny Gow, who is down on the ground with the new boss of Cadillac.
Yes, Graham Loudon's right next to me with Mario Andretti and Dan Taris, the leaders of Cadillac, I suppose, and you're in the hot seat, team principal. How does it feel to actually be here starting your first race today?
Well, it's great. You know, it's a real testament to everybody involved in the whole team, everyone in the UK and all our colleagues in the US as well. And also, you know, I want to take the chance also to say a big thanks to all of the people who support them, the friends, the families, everyone who's supported them. That's the rock that we built this team on. So it's fantastic to be here on the grid for our first ever Grand Prix for a Cadillac Formula 1 team.
Does it feel quite emotional?
Yeah, it is. And, you know, it's sport, and sport's meant to have emotion. It's a highly technical sport, for sure, but it's the greatest team game in the world. And so for me, it's just a real honour to be part of such a fantastic team.
And new car, new team, but familiar faces with Sergio Perez and Valtteri Bottas. They're starting in P18 and P19, but
Yeah.
that's not the point, is it?
No, I mean, we got a multiple world champion behind us. So, you know, in this game, you just got to take your chances when you can, and see how we can execute the race. And it's our first one ever for the team. So, you know, hopefully it'll be a good one.
Fingers crossed. Thank you so much. Good luck, Graham.
Thank you very much. Thanks.
Team principal Graham Loudon speaking with Jen on the grid, and they've got 10-time race winner in the form of Valtteri Bottas, 6-time race winner in the form of Sergio Perez. We're coming up to a year, really, since the entry was officially announced. There's no underplaying the undertaking that Cadillac have here to have made it onto the grid for round 1.
Yeah, it's a massive undertaking, and as he rightly points out, this is a huge effort by an awful lot of people, and it was very good to point out that it wasn't just the people employed by Cadillac, it's the friends and families, the people that have been left at home while a massive amount of sacrifice has been put in by those people to get this far. It's such a big undertaking, not just because they've got to design and manufacture a Formula One car, but they need everything to support that. They need the infrastructure, the grid trolleys that are currently on the grid, holding the tyres and all the equipment to keep the engine warm. All of that had to be built, designed, manufactured from scratch. So it's an absolutely enormous undertaking, and congratulations to getting this far, but really this is just where the journey begins.
Well, they've out-qualified, as Graham Loudon said, Max Verstappen, in a multiple world champion. Verstappen will start down in 20th, but there's a little bit more to the story there, Mark.
Yeah, we didn't manage to see what sort of pace Verstappen had. I don't think he would have really troubled the Mercedes of George Russell and Kimi Antonelli, but on his first lap within qualifying at the start of Q1, he spun off and hit the wall hard.
Well, let's head down to Jen, who's with the team principal of Audi, Jonathan Wheatley.
I am. Jonathan, we know you from Red Bull. OK, you were in this position last year, but now you're with Audi. Is it good to be here?
Oh, it's fantastic. You know, we've been talking about it for so long, Jenny, but we're actually here racing as the Audi Revolut Formula One team, and it's a great testament to all the hard work that's gone on behind the scenes and the vision at Audi.
And I tell you what, you didn't qualify badly, did you? P10, P11, it was Gabi Bortoletto. He could have even maybe got a little bit further up, but you had an issue when he came into the end of Q2, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think if you'd have said to me at the start of the weekend, I can promise you, 10th and 11th on the grid, I'd have taken your hand off. But look, we're here, we're competing. We've got an issue we're trying to fix on Nico's car, so I hope the fans enjoy the race, but I've got to go.
OK, go. Thank you so much.
Yeah, it sounds like a bit of a race against time on Nico Hülkenberg's Audi, but as Jen said, Bortoletto inside the top 10, Hülkenberg 11th. Cadillac are a brand new team, they are an additional team, that's why we're up to 22 drivers now, but Audi, who have taken over the Sauber entry, well, they are also a new team, I think is fair to say. Brand new engine for them as well, and a huge brand to have in the sport, Mark.
Yeah, and they're coming in and not doing this by halves, so they have taken on building the car, but also their own power unit as well, and that's huge. We talked earlier on about the opportunity that gives an organisation, and Mercedes seems to have exploited that very, very well. Audi have presented themselves with the same opportunity, and it's very early days, but I think when we talk about a midfield pack, I think we can fairly confidently say that Audi all across this weekend have been at the very front of that, and I think, as Jonathan said there, Jonathan Wheatley, if you'd offered him that in advance of the weekend, he'd have absolutely taken it.
We mentioned Hülkenberg is under investigation for a starting procedure infringement, hearing possible sensor issues with the loss of telemetry from the car as Audi continue to try and get him ready for lights out in just over 9 minutes' time.
And I'm just wondering, we haven't had any actual update on the information, but I'm speculating that the infringement itself could have been that the mechanics had to leave the grid and effectively go onto the racetrack outside of the grid boundaries to recover that car and get it into position. So I'm wondering if that's the infringement that's potentially being looked at by the stewards.
Well, we'll keep you up to date on that. We've just seen images of Max Verstappen getting ready, just about to put his helmet on and step into his Red Bull. A long afternoon for him. On the other side of the Red Bull garage, he has a new teammate in the form of Isaac Hadjar. The Frenchman steps up from Racing Bulls after a rookie season in which he took a maiden podium, and he's qualified third, as we're also seeing now the Audi of Nico Hülkenberg being pushed back into the pit lane and possibly back into the garage. And well, it may well be a non-start for Hülkenberg or a pit lane start as we monitor that situation.
Yeah, and it's because they're quite limited in what they're able to do on the grid. There are very strict timing procedures by which you have to, of course, clear the grid. All the engineers and mechanics have to get off the grid by a certain time. If they think it's going to take longer than that, it makes sense to push it into the garage. Yes, they'll miss the beginning of the race start. They won't take their place on the grid, but they are able to get that car hopefully up and running and underway. And I think Jenny has the boss of the Mercedes team downstairs, and it's Toto Wolff.
Yes, right at the top of the grid. This is a good place to be, isn't it, Toto?
Yeah, I've missed that view for a while.
Yeah, I bet. How are you approaching this race?
I don't know. It's a trip into the unknown. We don't know how the start performance is going to be. how the race is going to go.
And how are the boys before they got on the car? Do they feel okay? Because this is a whole new concept to deal with.
Yeah, they feel okay.
Good luck.
Thanks, Jenny. Yeah, the two Mercedes starting on the front row. Russell ahead of Kimi Antonelli, back for his second year. Then comes Hadjar. Impressive from Hadjar in qualifying to line up third, and exactly kind of what Red Bull have been looking for all these years.
Yeah, exactly that, because the second driver's been a problem for Red Bull. They had to heavily rely on Max Verstappen, and of course he delivers quite frequently, but on the days when he can't, the days when he has a problem, and that's exactly what happened yesterday in qualifying. As we said, he hit the wall in Q1. They needed their second driver to step up, and this time around Isaac Hadjar's done exactly that. P3 on the grid, I think, has exceeded all of their expectations, so a really good start for him.
Where are we at with Ferrari? They caused a stir in testing with their incredibly fast starts when we saw some practice starts out in Bahrain for pre-season testing. Charles Leclerc has qualified 4th. Lewis Hamilton embarks on his 20th year in the sport from 7th.
Yeah, I think to sum it up, probably disappointing. And, you know, 4th and 7th, there is still definitely room to turn that into a result. We haven't yet seen a consistent run of performance for them. I think that's their biggest problem. Flashes of brilliance across the weekend, but if you look at Mercedes and compare it to George Russell, he's been so consistent, always the fastest pretty much, always with about the same gap, around 6 or 7 tenths over the next best team. Ferrari have managed to make dents into that, but only on rare occasions, and what they need is consistency. But I think that's a problem that everybody's suffering with outside of Mercedes right now. So many unknowns in this technology, in these brand new cars. You heard Toto just say it earlier on, I think Zach Brown said it as well. They don't know what's going to happen. The start of this race is unpredictable, and I am here for that. So anyone who's listening to us at home, well done for getting up. You are in for a treat. We'll do our very best to talk you through what we have no idea is going to happen.
Absolutely. A very good morning to you back in the UK if you're listening to us. It is going to be worth the early wake-up call, because it's not only us, but it is pretty much all the teams as well. We run up and down the paddock chatting to people, and nobody quite knows how the next 58 laps of racing around this Albert Park circuit are going to go. 14 turns, 5 to the left and 9 that go to the right, just over 5.2 kilometres long in length too.
Let's give people a little bit of context of what we're talking about. Why is it so unpredictable? Massive changes in technology with these cars. They are, of course, hybrid cars, like they were in the previous era, but now a much bigger balanced split between the electric hybrid side, the electric motors and the battery, and the internal combustion engine, around 50-50. So each of those delivering around 50% of the power. But what comes with that is a huge amount of complexity, both in terms of the systems that run it, hugely complicated and new, and the way that the drivers and teams are able to utilise and strategise that over the course of a race. Some of these things we still haven't tested fully in race conditions. Teams are still making mistakes, they're working out how to optimise them. The race start itself, completely different. We've lost the MGUH, the electric motor that used to spin up the turbo and avoid that turbo lag that anyone who's driven an old-fashioned turbo car will be familiar with. We've now got massive turbo lag in these cars, and at the start of a race we don't know whether everyone's going to get off the line in the optimum way. There could be huge opportunity for someone like Verstappen starting all the way at the back and out of position. He could make up loads of position, but then so could anyone. We just don't know, and I can't wait.
That is exactly perfect and sums it up really nicely, Mark. Let's just try and pinpoint a couple of other stories that we're watching out for. We'll run you through the whole grid in full shortly. We have got a new face on the grid. The only rookie in the field is the British racing driver Arvid Lindblad, and we've been so impressed with him so far this weekend, Mark, haven't we?
A really solid start to his career. Like this time last year we had 6 new rookies in the field, and let's face it, it didn't go that well over the course of the Australian Grand Prix for many of them. Some of them ending in the wall, a lot of them having problems, albeit that it was raining. But he has delivered a really steady and solid performance over the course of the weekend, gradually building his performance, which is exactly what you need to do. So what comes with that is a building of his own confidence, and he goes into this race, I think, possibly in the best way that he could have done through his preparation this weekend.
Yeah, we'll be watching Lindblad from 9th on the grid, just behind his teammate Liam Lawson. No Oscar Piastri for this one. The home hero crashing out on the lap to the grid. And there's question marks around Nico Hulkenberg, who's been wheeled back into the garage. Jenny, you're down there. What can you see?
I am. The team are working furiously to try and get this car back out into the pit lane to start this race. It's going to be a rush, and it's going to be a race against time that they're trying all they can.
Thanks, Jen. Yeah, just a couple of minutes then to go until we get lights out. And, well, Andrew threatened that we weren't going to talk about tyres, but we are, and we had the tyres come in. It looks like the majority going for the medium compound to start.
Yeah, it's... sorry, Andrew. I was... you go for it. You do. You can do tyres. It's your favourite thing, isn't it?
Sorry, I go, isn't it? I was quite happy sitting back in my seat, being half
one
asleep.
One last bit of work, Andrew, for you.
Yeah. So, medium hard is a predicted strategy. Some people are on the hard a bit lower down the grid. One stop we're expecting, but we're also expecting a bit of chaos, so maybe it won't be one stop at all.
No.
Expecting the unexpected.
We really could, and speaking to a few of the people up and down the paddock today, that there could be different ways you approach that energy management. Do you want to get yourself involved in a fight with cars early door, or do you actually opt to stop early, get yourself into some clean air and just run your own race?
Yeah, the problem that the teams and the drivers have got is it's so finely balanced with energy, and you need the energy in the battery to deliver maximum performance. As we said earlier on, about half of your car's performance coming from the battery and electric motor. It's getting drained and recharged, or harvested. That's the term you'll hear talked about a lot. That's happening multiple times throughout a lap, so it's very, very rapid. But what happens is there's an optimum way to get around a lap. Now, in qualifying, you're kind of on your own. You're able to really strategize and optimize that, hopefully, for the best lap. In the race, you can choose to do that. It's a really efficient way to get around. You can maximize lap time and maximize efficiency. But these are racing drivers. And when another racing driver comes alongside or is close up behind in the mirrors, that little red mist comes down and you want to bury the throttle to keep them behind, or you want to seize the opportunity to make an overtake, and in doing just that you can rapidly drain your battery. Now, you might think that's not a problem because you can reharvest. You can, but if the chasing car or the attacking car has has a larger capacity or more energy in the battery, they have the opportunity to take you back very quickly. So it's a interesting game of cat and mouse that we don't know how it's going to work yet.
We really are about to step into the unknown. 22 drivers sit waiting on the grid. We're actually down 2 now here in Albert Park. The grandstands are packed. The anticipation is building, and a brand new Formula One season is ready to burst into life. Months of preparation, new cars, new regulations, and now the moment has finally arrived as the engine notes start to build. What's in store for us? We're about to find out over the course of 58 laps. It's time for the Australian Grand Prix. As they pull away from their grid spots for the first time this year, from the back will be Lance Stroll's Aston Martin in 22nd spot. Ahead of him, Carlos Sainz's Williams from P20.1. Max Verstappen with work to do from 20th. He's behind the 2 Cadillacs, Bottas and Perez. Fernando Alonso just missed out on Q2, starts from 17th. Franco Colapinto in the Alpine will go from 16th behind Alex Albon's Williams. Pierre Gasly in the other Alpine from 14th behind compatriot Esteban Ocon in the Haas from 13th. His teammate is ahead of him, Oliver Behrman from 12th. Nico Hulkenberg has to avoid taking the start due to issues. There'll be a gap before his teammate starts inside the top 10. That's Gabriel Bortoleto. Then it's the 2 Racing Bulls. Lindblad 9th, Lawson 8th. Into the top 7 now, and it's Lewis Hamilton for Ferrari. Then Lando Norris from 6th. No Oscar Piastri in the field. There'll be a gap where 5th place is Charles Leclerc 4th. And your top 3, Isaac Hadjar of Red Bull with a Mercedes front row lockout, Kimi Antonelli alongside pole sitter George Russell. Well, good morning. If you are just waking up, this is 5 Live F1, and it's the first Grand Prix of the 2026 Formula One season. It's setting us up for a busy day here on 5 Live from 7 o'clock this morning. Jeanette Quacci and Stefan Powell are with you on Sunday breakfast. Colin Murray on from 10. I believe our very own Jenny Gow might be making an appearance on that. Then we're building up to the day's FA Cup football action on 5 Live Sport with Steve Crossman from midday at 1:30. We'll have live commentary of Port Vale v Sunderland in the 5th round of the FA Cup. Then from 4:30, our attention turns to Leeds United against Norwich City. That is all to come today. But right now, this is the first Formula One Grand Prix of the 2026 season. It's Harry Benjamin with you in the commentary box. Alongside me is the former McLaren mechanic Mark Priestley. And the anticipation is building. It's a whole new era. The cars are new, the engines are new, more teams, new drivers. And we do not know what to expect.
Most hotly anticipated starts to a season I can remember in my history within this sport. George Russell lines up at the front of the grid. His teammates, Kimi Antonelli and the sister Mercedes alongside him, and everyone else gradually now forming up on that grid with a few notable gaps. Oscar Piastri crashed on his opening laps to the grid. Nico Hülkenberg stops with a failure and is in the garage desperately trying to get that car fixed right now. And the rest of the field creep round the final corner to take their slots. We are moments away.
Keeping an eye on things down on the ground for us is Jenny Gow. Or maybe not, as we will try and get Jenny back. But the first race is about to begin. 22 cars down two. No Oscar Piastri and no Nico Hülkenberg as Lance Stroll in the Aston Martin, which is struggling. We're not expecting either car to finish the race with Honda power unit issues. The green flag flies at the back. The revs rise, the pre-start begins. On pole position is George Russell, alongside him is Kimi Antonelli, behind lies Hadjar. It's all eyes to the lights and foot to the floor as we go racing for the first time in 2026, and it's a poor start from George Russell, but he just about holds on to it. The two Ferraris flying, Charles Leclerc takes the lead, down into turn one. Russell has to settle for second, then comes Isaac Hadjar and the Red Bull. Lewis Hamilton's up to fourth, heading three wide, down towards the right-hander of turn number 3.
Well, all the way through pre-season testing, we talked about Ferrari and their starts. We wondered whether the others might have closed up. No, they haven't. It was a blistering start, particularly from Charles Leclerc, but also from Lewis Hamilton. They've moved their positions up, and George Russell loses that slot. But crucially, all of the starters seem to be through the first couple of corners unscathed.
Looked like Russell got so much wheel spin off the start, but they seem to have all made it fairly cleanly through as they now arc their way down Lakeside Drive. The Alpine looking very racy in the mid-pack. That's Pierre Gasly trying to get himself through on the Haas ahead of him as they continue to fight here, and it's Leclerc who leads Russell. Hadjar Lindblad is up to fourth with Lewis Hamilton just behind as the Red Bull, as the Fernando Alonso I should say, the Aston Martin from 17th up to 10th position. A lot of chopping and changing in this first lap.
Well, we said the start could be unpredictable, and it's been exactly that. Some people nailing it, some getting it right, others really struggling to get that power down, get the turbo spinning up and deliver the power when they're massively limited on traction. George Russell, perfect example, getting the wheels spinning, not driving him forward and losing that position to Leclerc. He's still in the lead of this race. Russell tucked in behind him going into turn 1 at the beginning of lap 2.
Lap 2 of 58, it's Leclerc ahead of Russell, then comes Hamilton, Isaac Hadjar fourth, Arvid Lindblad in his first race as a Formula 1 driver. The British Racing Bulls driver is fifth, ahead of Lando Norris. Kimi Antonelli's down to seventh, having started second. Then comes Ocon ahead of Gasly and Alonso. Great starts for those three who are towards the back. Then it's Albon, Behrman in 13th ahead of Sainz. The Cadillac of Bottas is up to 15th. Max Verstappen is up to 16th ahead of Colapinto. Lawson has plummeted down the order in his Racing Bulls in 18th. Perez is 19th with Stroll, the 20 drivers that are taking part. Oscar Piastri crashed on the way to the grid, and Nico Hülkenberg with technical issues was not able to take to the start. But the battle for the lead is on as we spin ourselves out of turns 9 and 10. It's Charles Leclerc who is trying to hold on, but George Russell sweeps by him, has the racing line by the time we get to the 90-degree right-hander of turn 11, and retakes the lead of the Australian Grand Prix.
And in that, while that's been happening, Lewis Hamilton has moved up past Isaac Hadjar and he's into P3, so Ferrari's second and third. There's a big gap though behind these lead two. I think at the moment what's happened is Leclerc's been holding up George Russell. You might start to see the Mercedes, that unbelievably powerful car that seems to have got so much right in this brand new era, in this early phase, start to eke away and pull away a gap now. The rest of the field forming up largely behind Isaac Hadjar, who seems at the moment to be the cork in the bottle.
Yeah, all just biding their time. Charles Leclerc is not letting George Russell escape up the road. Lewis Hamilton, who didn't score a podium in a Grand Prix all year, currently occupying that spot in third with Hadjar and Lindblad, the top five. Word from the stewards room involving Franco Colapinto's Alpine. He is under investigation for a starting procedure, but we've got the start out of the way. That was the first bit of chaos we were expecting, and it did deliver with huge differentiation of start up and down the field as Charles Leclerc now wants to have a go into the left-hander of turn 9 and manages to make it stick using more battery deployment perhaps, and being able to deploy more energy to get ahead of George Russell, who then tries it again into the 90-degree right-hander. He'll have the outside at turn 11, but Leclerc has the inside and holds on. Leclerc back in the lead here in Australia.
So this is the weird kind of racing that people have been talking about leading up to this race. Cars just driving past each other on a straight effectively, presumably because of differences in electrical deployment capability. But that's how George Russell passed Charles Leclerc in the first place. That's how Charles Leclerc just got back past George Russell. I don't know how this is going to balance out. I don't know what the people at home are going to be thinking about it when they watch it. But it's not motor racing as we recognise it.
It is something to get our heads around. Worth noting that overtake mode has been enabled. We no longer have anything like DRS or drag with the drag reduction system, but overtake mode operates on the same parameters as DRS. It can be used freely in practice and qualifying, and activated only when you are within a second of the car in head. It's a strategic option for the drivers and gives them about half a megajoule. That's how you measure the energy deployment to deploy when chasing the car ahead of them.
Yeah, you effectively, when you activate overtake mode, you get your energy lasts a little bit longer down the next straight. So you're able to deploy that energy, assuming you have enough of it in your own battery, until you reach a greater speed. Effectively, the car that you're overtaking will start to ramp down on power when it reaches a particular kph, a particular speed. Your car in overtake mode will deliver that power, continue delivering that power until it reaches a higher speed, effectively giving you the chance to make an overtake. The other thing you will notice if you see these cars, if you start to watch them, is that the wings do now open, a little bit like DRS, but instead of just the rear wing opening, the front wing opens as well. It's an active aerodynamics. It's not an overtaking mode. It's just about efficiency and managing to dump a load of drag to keep these cars moving with this sort of limited amount of energy that they now have.
Absolutely. As lap 5 ticks by of 58 here for the opening round of the Formula One World Championship. Leclerc leads, a bit of movement further back as Kimi Antonelli, who started on the front row, makes his move on Arvid Lindblad down towards turn 1. It's a swift, easy move for the young Italian. It gets himself up into 5th. His next target will be Isaac Hadjar in 4th. But right now the top 3 all fairly close together. Leclerc in the Ferrari, then comes the Mercedes of Russell with Hamilton in 3rd. Let's head downstairs and get an update from Jenny Gow.
Yes, I've just been speaking with Pirelli. They suggest that the soft tyre will last at least 15 laps. Alonso started on it, as did Carlos Sainz. So those to watch out for the first pit stops of 2026.
Thanks, Jenny. Yeah, Leclerc leads still by 0.7 of a second from Russell. Then it's Hamilton, Hadjar, Antonelli, the top 5. Arvid Lindblad is 6th, ahead of Lando Norris, who has lost a position where he started. Ocon, Gasly, and Bortoletto's found himself back inside the top 10 for Audi. Just outside the point scoring positions is Ollie Behrman in the Haas. Max Verstappen working his way up as well into the just outside the top 10 as we're getting a look at the start once more. And poor start for Liam Lawson right at the back, which nearly saw Franco Colapinto spear into the back of him. Also a very poor start from Kimi Antonelli's Mercedes.
Yeah, that was a really painful one from Antonelli because of course he was starting on the front row. He watched his teammate disappear down the road as he got loads of wheel spin. He fell backwards, and Isaac Hadjar actually did a really solid job and moved up ahead of him, taking that spot. So, yeah, lots of chopping and changing at the start. We thought that might happen. That was going to be a feature and will continue to be a feature because starts are not as simple as they used to be. Deploying these various systems, getting this turbo spinning up, managing and combating that turbo lag that we talked about earlier on. The Ferraris, we know, have definitely got a good start, and Charles Leclerc putting that to very, very good use.
Yeah, that smaller turbo that Ferrari have been able to build into their engine really showing well for the starts. The Red Bull had a good start. Red Bull Powertrains in partnership with Ford for their engine for the first time this year. That same engine being ran by the sister team Racing Bulls, and Lindblad had a great start. Not such the case for Liam Lawson, who just did not get off the line, and from a top 10 position the Kiwi is down to 17th, only ahead of the 2 Cadillacs and Lance Stroll as the top 2 battle once again. And this time Charles Leclerc wants to get his elbows out. He doesn't want to make it easy for George Russell, forcing him to the inside before turn 11, and Russell just has to back out and bide his time.
And this is one of the things we were talking about in the build-up to the start. We've got Leclerc in front, George Russell literally right underneath his rear wing. A couple of seconds back from that, we've got Lewis Hamilton. So he's in a little bit of clear air. He's able to run in that optimum way that we talked about, in an efficient way around this circuit. The front two, they're fighting each other. That red mist that we talked about, they're desperate to get past. George Russell really trying everything he can to get past the Ferrari defending. That's all using more energy than would be ideal at various points around this circuit.
That was very dangerous by Leclerc, especially what we spoke about in briefing.
That was very dangerous by Leclerc, especially what we spoke about in the driver's briefing. That's what George Russell just said on the radio about that manoeuvre we witnessed, where Charles Leclerc defending quite aggressively into turn 11.
What he's talking about is Charles Leclerc, who was in front, moving over off the racing line. George Russell tucking in behind him to get that slipstream. Now, one of the features of these new cars is when you run out of energy, or when you need to harvest energy, put that energy back into the battery, the car has to slow down to be able to do that. You can do it through lift and coasting, you can use the electric motor and flip it in reverse to become a generator, but both of those things slow the car down. Now, if you're the car behind, tucked underneath the rear wing, using a slipstream to get past, and suddenly the car in front loses a bit of performance and begins to slow, there's a worry, a concern. That could be quite a dangerous feature in this modern era of Formula One. I think that's what George was referring to there.
Round the final corner we go once again. Turn number 14 as they run out wide, get dangerously close to the wall, try and carry a bit of speed out of there. But of course, with these new battery management techniques, often starting a lap not at full throttle. Again, another complication to get our heads around as we now rapidly head down towards turn 3, the heaviest of the braking zones, and George Russell slides down the inside. It's neck and neck as we turn into the right-hander of the Ferrari, but the Mercedes comes out on top. It's Russell back in the lead. Leclerc falls to second.
This is a sort of quirky feature of 2026. It's early days, I know, but we've got these two drivers swapping positions fairly regularly, which doesn't really enhance anybody's overall race time here, because they're both sitting underneath the rear wing of the other one. It doesn't really matter who's in front. In fact, the car that's second is able to be a little bit more efficient using a slipstream process to save a little bit of energy. So all of this swapping and chopping and changing, I guess if you're a team perspective, you're sitting there getting a little bit frustrated, and it may be, and this is again counterintuitive if you're a racing driver, it may be that sitting back, playing a longer game, being patient, and here they go, George Russell trying to swap places again, being a little bit more patient might actually be the optimum way to run a race like this, which goes against everything that a racing driver's learnt throughout their career to get here.
Yeah, Charles Leclerc now back in front, able to seemingly always get George Russell at the end of that Lakeside Drive complex, where you arc your way from turn 6 all the way through to the quick flicks of 9 and 10. Leclerc is back in front as we now head down the start-finish straight once more. Russell to the inside, big lock-up from George Russell. Runs deep, does he get it all gathered up? He does, but that allows Leclerc to spin round the outside with the rear almost stepping out of the Ferrari, and Lewis Hamilton's been brought into the fray as well. It's Ferrari versus Mercedes versus Ferrari. Leclerc, Russell and Hamilton all fighting it out for the lead of the Australian Grand Prix, and by the time we get to turn number 6, it's Leclerc ahead of Russell, ahead of Hamilton.
This is so strange to get our heads around because it's such a new concept. If I'm sitting on either of these two pit walls as a strategist, as a race engineer, I think I'm thinking to tell my driver, just be patient. You don't need to fight for position at this point. We can go for it when we get into the sort of pit stop windows and we want to start gaining track position. But right now, let's just keep it steady, under control. We nearly saw George Russell lose it there, a massive lock-up. It's brought the Ferrari into play. Charles Leclerc took the opportunity to get in front. He nearly stepped out and stuck it in the wall himself. So all of this excitement is just going to be hampering what is an overall, minimising or not really optimising the way that a race should be run from these teams.
Lap 9 of 58, Leclerc leads Russell, Hamilton the top 3. Then it's Antonelli and Hadjar the top 5. Lindblad, Norris, Ocon, Gasly and Verstappen, who started down in 20th, having crashed in the first part of qualifying yesterday, is now up inside the top 10. He's on the hard tyre, so going very long into this race compared to everybody ahead of him, who's on the medium tyre, which will degrade quicker. Behind Verstappen, just outside the points, is Ollie Behrman for Haas. Bortoletto has lost positions in the Audi. He's now down to 12th spot. Then it's Albon, Sainz, Colapinto is the top 15, and he has a stop-and-go penalty to serve as the Argentine starting his first full season in Formula One, and he's just come in the pits, I think, to serve that stop-go penalty for a start procedure infringement. Perez and Bottas, the two Cadillacs, still going in 17th and 18th, with Lance Stroll in the second Aston Martin bringing up the rear of the field.
Yeah, so just looking at Max Verstappen, he's already up inside the top 10, so he's on an alternate strategy to everybody else in front of him. He's on that hard tyre, all of the rest of the top 10 on the medium, and it's looking like a very good race tyre. We're only 10 laps into this 58-lap Grand Prix, but the big question from a tyre perspective, we go back to old school Formula One where we always talked about tyres and the tyre strategy. The question's going to be, how far can he go into this race? And if that medium tyre can be a good run, a good tyre to use in the second stint, a higher performing tyre, if Verstappen can run long, pick up places, he'll then be on the faster tyre in the later stages. It's just going to be all about dependent how far he can run, how far others can get into this race before they have to make their pit stop. So to bring it back to the Formula One that we know and love, the one we've been so used to, there is still a tyre strategy going on here between Verstappen and the rest of the top 10.
No further investigation on Charles Leclerc for that turn 11 incident reviewed. No further investigation as we head down to turn 3. Heavy braking zone, a right-hander, and a good chance, the really only proper corner where you can brake enough to harvest as much energy as you would like. Leclerc still holds the lead ahead of Russell, then it's Hamilton, but I tell you what I'm going to be intrigued by, as Kimi Antonelli is now approaching on the scene in the second Mercedes, and how that changes this Mercedes versus Ferrari dynamic now at the front of the field.
Well, yeah, we've got 2 Ferraris and 2 Mercedes in that top 4, and then a significant gap back to Hadjar in the Red Bull. But the reason Antonelli and Hamilton were able to close up was because those front 2 were scrapping over positions every couple of corners and costing themselves a little bit of overall race time. So that's what I mean. Perhaps the bigger game. Oh, we've got a Red Bull slowing.
We have got a Red Bull going slow, and it's Isaac Hadjar who has dropped down, and he's got smoke pouring out the back of his car. The yellow hazard lights on his mirrors, new for this year, are flashing. Car off the road. He pulls it onto the grass, finds an exit in the wall. Let's hear from him.
Okay, copy.
Come on! It's broken. Everything
is broken, is what Isaac Hadjar reports in his first race for Red Bull. Really impressed yesterday when Max Verstappen wasn't able to be in the fight at the sharp end. The second driver at Red Bull finally was, as Lando Norris is told to box. Virtual safety car comes in. The pit lane now about to get busy.
Yeah, this is interesting because this is way earlier than the optimum tyre strategy would have been predicted before the race. So are they switching to a potential 2-stop at McLaren and potentially with others? We've got Ocon in the pits as well. We may get others to follow. The fact that we've lost the Red Bull of Isaac Hadjar, who was sitting in P5, has meant that not only have we got a top 4 with a large gap now, nearly 12 seconds, the guy now in 5th is the rookie. It's Arvid Lindblad in the RB. So costly on one side of that Red Bull family, but beneficial to those on the other side.
Yeah, absolutely, but there might well be a little bit of concern from the others in that family, all having the same engine built by Red Bull powertrains in partnership with Ford, the American brand, coming back into Formula One after years away. Lap 12 of 58, we're under virtual safety car conditions, which means everyone comes to a slow and hits the delta on displayed on their steering wheel. So Leclerc, Russell, Hamilton, Antonelli, Lindblad did not come into pit. Neither did Max Verstappen. It was Lando Norris who really led the charge and first of the pit stoppers. So will that benefit them? Will they be able to get a kind of undercut advantage by pitting first? We'll have to wait and see, and it could form into a full safety car still, because Isaac Hadjar's car is off the road, but it's still there, and smoke is pouring out the back of it.
Yeah, the sound you can hear actually is now Isaac Hadjar. Let's listen in. Shifting down all the way through the gears. That's really unusual. You heard him have a major problem there. He's pulled over to the left-hand side, overtaken by other cars. And I tell you, the reason the car is still stationary is it doesn't have a green light on the front of his roll hoop, which would signify that the car is safe to touch. So the marshals can't now touch it until the team are able to reset that and make the car safe. So you're absolutely right. We could end up escalating this into something more than a virtual safety car.
Mercedes have come in with both cars in the last few moments and back out again. Antonelli and Russell opting for pit stops. The two Ferraris not. Charles Leclerc leads this race. Lewis Hamilton is now second.
The two Ferraris still have the opportunity to do it, because I think we're going to keep this virtual safety car for way longer, so they may well still get round another lap. And if they want to, because the gaps are all maintained under the virtual safety car, they could still take that opportunity. You get to save a significant chunk of time by making the pit stop now.
At least one of us should have come in.
Yeah, I agree with Hamilton. I don't understand why Ferrari haven't pitted one of their cars. It's sort of default strategy. Being a virtual safety car, you pit because it's a free stop, or a much safer stop. Save something like 10 seconds. It's bizarre.
Well, I'll tell you one of the reasons that it could be. If this early stop means that those that have made the pit stop need to start thinking switching to a two-stop, Ferrari don't have the same tyre allocation, or the same tyres left from what they've used over the course of this weekend as some of the teams around them. So maybe they don't have enough tyres to be able to, switch to a two-stop and still make that optimum. So, as I said, they might still have the opportunity to come in at the end of this lap. We're still under virtual safety car, so they could still do that without losing position. We'll wait and see as they approach the pit lane. The first Ferrari goes past without stopping, as does the second. So no pit stops for Ferrari.
But Ferrari are out in the pit lane, but neither one has come in. So waiting there with a fresh set of hard tyres, but they're all told to go back inside as we start another lap. Lap 14 of 58. Leclerc leads a Ferrari 1-2 with Hamilton in second. Then comes George Russell, who has pitted, come back out in third. He's now on the hard tyre. We're getting the virtual safety car ending. So that opportunity to make a cheap pit stop where you lose less time is gone. Lindblad fourth, didn't pit, still on the medium tyre. Antonelli did pit onto the hard tyre. He is fifth. Then it's Verstappen who didn't pit. Behrman didn't pit. Bortoletto neither. 6th, 7th and 8th, with Lando Norris then, who led the charge for pit stoppers when the virtual safety car first came out for Isaac Hadjar as stricken Red Bull. 9th, Esteban Ocon rounds out the top 10 as we're back to green flag racing.
Yes, on those tyre sets, Mark's absolutely right. One medium and one set of hards each for the two Ferrari drivers, whereas the Mercedes and McLaren drivers, or at least one McLaren driver who's left in the race, they've both got two sets of mediums, so they have the option. Having said that, I bet you Mercedes are thinking, well, we're going to go to the end on these hard tyres we've just fitted anyway, so it still doesn't really make sense to me why Ferrari wouldn't try the same.
Well, and the other thing now, George Russell, sitting in third place, has a huge amount of clear air in front of him. We've been talking ever since this race started about how fighting with other cars costs you massively in terms of your energy efficiency. Is Alonso being told to stop the car in the Aston Martin. We thought that moment would come. It's come after 14 laps, so a retirement from Alonso in the Aston Martin as he pulls into the pit lane. George Russell, just to finish that point, George Russell now has clear air, a very fast car that he can now optimise and become efficient with because he's not fighting anyone else. I imagine what's going to happen is he's now going to close up behind the two Ferraris, behind Hamilton, and as Andrew points out, he's got a fresh set of hard tyres. The Ferraris will have to pit at some point in this race, leaving Russell to potentially go on with a bit of clear track and build himself a nice little gap towards the end.
Just listening to Lando Norris from a few moments ago, come out of turn 10 and overtaking. That was one of the Cadillacs just getting out of the way as a lapped runner potentially, with Lando Norris further up the field. Norris, the reigning champion, up in 9th at the moment. We are back to green flag running. It is Leclerc who leads for Ferrari. Then it's Hamilton, Russell, Lindblad, Antonelli, the top 5. Verstappen is 6th ahead of Behrman. Bortoletto, Norris and Ocon complete the top 10. They are your point scorers. Then it's Gasly, Albon, Sainz, Perez and Lawson, with Franco Colapinto the top 16. Lance Stroll in the Aston Martin still in this one, up to 17th ahead of Valtteri Bottas, who is now the last runner, down in 18th.
And that's 10 seconds behind. How are they only 10 seconds?
So
far we are on plan. We are focusing on plan A.
So yeah, I think Mark's right. They must be doing a two-stop, but from the outside it looks like they've just thrown away any chance of winning the race. Charles Leclerc was battling with George Russell, apparently with the same pace of car for the first part of the race. They were swapping positions, slightly artificially, but nevertheless there were some positions. Russell didn't seem to be able to gain an advantage on Leclerc, and now they've just given him free air, and they're going to come out 20 seconds behind him nearly, and that's the end of the race for them, I'm afraid.
And maybe no surprise, George Russell banged in the fastest lap of the race because he's got that clear air, and you just heard how surprised Lewis Hamilton was to find that he is only 10 seconds behind, having made a pit stop, now 9 seconds behind and closing.
Well, unless, of course, we get more interruptions into this session. Red flags not to be ruled out either, as Charles Leclerc is being told we are going to plan A. So plan A on the medium tyre, that's what he started on, hasn't pitted. One stop, make it to around lap 26 perhaps before you stick on the hard tyre to go to the end, which is 58 laps completed.
Well, I spoke to a lot of engineers up and down the pit lane earlier on today before this race started, and most of them said, whatever you think plan A is, it's almost unthinkable that we'll end up on that in the race. Well, here we are, Ferrari clearly sticking to plan A at this point.
For now.
I mean, it's not as extreme as Qatar last year when McLaren were the only team who didn't come in, but it's not far off at the moment.
And I think also, the fact that they left it a lap, then they clearly thought about it, they brought the mechanics out into the pit lane around that pit stop box the second time around. It looked like the Ferraris crept past the pit lane almost desperately hoping they were going to get called in, but they didn't. So just again another example of maybe not the clearest strategy, maybe not the clearest communication, maybe hesitation. I don't want to be too critical of them without knowing all of the information, but it does at this stage. Well, look, they might have either played an absolute blinder or they've got it horribly wrong, so we'll wait and see before we criticise too much.
Well, we are down to 18 runners in this Grand Prix from 22. Nico Hülkenberg didn't take the start. Oscar Piastri crashed out in quite dramatic fashion on his way to the grid. Isaac Hadjar, the cause of the virtual safety car, with what looks like engine problems, with smoke pouring out the back of his Red Bull, having to pull to the side of the road. And Fernando Alonso retiring and in his Aston Martin after what has been a very difficult start for the Silverstone-based squad, with their Honda engine proving to need a lot of work before it can become competitive.
Yes, so we're 4 down of our 10 retirements predicted before the race started, and we know that Lance Stroll's going to retire, that's a given, right? So he's an Aston Martin Honda. So are there going to be another 5 beyond him?
Well, I'm keeping an eye, because the Cadillacs, this is their first Grand Prix. Not only have they been able to run, mileage-wise in terms of pre-season testing, they've been able to do that, but it's operationally that they've really got to get on it straight away.
Well, we said if you can get to the end of this first Grand Prix, you are in with a great shout no matter who you are. And talking of first Grand Prix, Arvid Lindblad is in his first Grand Prix, and who's he got behind him now in his rearview mirrors? But 4-time world champion Max Verstappen in the Red Bull. Neither of these cars have made a pit stop either, but Verstappen, who started way back in P20, is now finding his way all the way up to P6 and chasing down P5.
Yeah, and Arvid Lindblad, one of his jobs is to let Max Verstappen pass now, because he's in the junior team.
This is the first task he has ahead of him. Max Verstappen, who has worked his way up to 6th. Verstappen, who has not pitted. Neither has Arvid Lindblad, the 18-year-old British driver, who is the youngest ever British Formula 1 driver, and if he scores points this weekend, could be the 4th youngest, could be the youngest to score points, as the other Racing Bulls is having a nice ding-dong with the Cadillac of Sergio Perez, and a bit of wheel-to-wheel contact there too.
Yeah, they banged wheels going into the turn.
Oh, we got another one out. It's the Cadillac of Valtteri Bottas, who's pulled up on the inside of the entry to the pit lane.
So yellow flags out, but I think that is going to be escalated very quickly. We talked about further opportunities for those who haven't made a pit stop. There we go. Virtual safety car is deployed. Will we now see others diving into the pits? This is more towards the sort of optimum strategy that we talked about. We're on lap 18 of 58, so making a stop now, you could still easily make that into a one-stop strategy according to your original plan. One of the challenges, of course, is that Cadillac is parked in the entrance to the pit lane. There is room to get by, but it's clearly a hazard.
Well, I'd say that's actually a lot safer than what we saw in qualifying with Gabriel Bortoletto's slow-going pit stop, which caused an incident nearly for Arvid Lindblad, who is fighting still with Max Verstappen as he comes into pit lane. We're going to have some more action in the pit lane. Lindblad's in, so too is Ollie Behrman, so too is Bortoletto. Max Verstappen hits his markers. The Red Bull is put up onto its jack and wheeled away, but it's a slow stop. He has to be held to let Lindblad through, and slots in behind on a fresh set of medium tyres as they feed out onto lap 19 of 58.
And still Ferrari don't come in.
Yeah.
It's Verstappen's come in on the hard tyre. That says everything about this strategy.
Well, that's right. I think Verstappen now clearly committing to a 2-stop, because to run all the way to the end from lap 19 on a set of mediums seems at this stage at least like a challenge. We don't know, we'll find out as the race unfolds, but Ferrari still on their mediums from the start, so 19 laps in, maybe looking like they're still aiming for this one-stop strategy, plan A as they've called it.
The two Ferraris under virtual safety car then still lead this Grand Prix. Charles Leclerc out in front, a previous winner of the Australian Grand Prix back in 2022. Lewis Hamilton, a two-time winner here back in 2008 and 2015. Then comes Russell in third, who started on pole position, but on the hard tyre, having pitted under the first virtual safety car. And then comes Antonelli with Lando Norris, the top five. We have another retirement in the form of the Cadillac of Valtteri Bottas. That car parked up on the grass on the entry to the pit lane, and now the marshals have recovered it and are wheeling it back in. Race control have very safely decided to close pit lane entry. Nobody else can come in.
So even if Ferrari wanted to make a late pit stop, they now can't, because the marshals are rolling that car down the pit lane. This is the sound of Valtteri Bottas grinding to a halt. Yeah, losing all power.
Oh, it all seizes up, doesn't it?
Yeah, losing all power, pulling off onto the grass where he's got absolutely no grip, grinds to a halt, and yeah, another problem, another technical issue. We thought there were going to be a number of those throughout today. It's understandable, such is the vast, extreme nature of how much of a big change this is for Formula One. We've lost a few cars already as the VSC is now coming to an end, and we're about to get racing again.
We certainly are, now down to 17 cars, and straight away as we get green flag running, Lindblad and Verstappen resume the fight down to turn one. Sparks flying off some of the cars as they head down to the start-finish straight, and now in the run down to turn number 3. Lindblad in the Racing Bulls still ahead of Max Verstappen in the Red Bull, 6th and 7th, with Ollie Behrman lurking behind an 8th.
I don't think Lindblad got the memo about being a junior driver in this Red Bull family, because he's had Max Verstappen behind him for quite some time. Verstappen desperate to get past him, even on the way into the pit lane. He was held, as you said, Harry, whilst Lindblad came through after the pit stop. He's still behind him, and he is fighting tooth and nail to keep the 4-time world champion behind him in his first ever Grand Prix. And
he's on the hard tyre, Lindblad, compared to Verstappen, who's on the medium. And this is the sound of Max Verstappen going round the outside of Lindblad into the flick of turn 9. The left-hander flicks through the right of 10 and out and speeds away. Verstappen now through on the British driver up into 6th. Lindblad down to 7th, with the two Hasses of Behrman and Ocon up inside the points, 8th and 9th. Gabriel Bortoleto in the Audi on debut for that team, who were Sauber last year. Bortoleto back for his second season.
My tyres are still okay. Do not box me the same time.
Lewis Hamilton saying my tyres are still okay. Do not box me. Do not pit me at the same time as Charles Leclerc. I am not double stacking and waiting behind him.
And what's interesting about that is that's Lewis Hamilton taking control of the strategy here. We've seen so many times that he's become frustrated with the way that Ferrari, the operational system of Ferrari, has perhaps cost him at times. He said going into the winter he was going to take some control back. He was going to reorganise members of his team, put the right people in place. That is a very clear message from Lewis. You do not box me at the same time as Charles Leclerc. I don't want to be compromised here.
Perez and Lawson, we picked up on that incident a little earlier on down at turn 11, forcing another driver off the track. That has been noted on that front. We'll update you if that gets elevated to under investigation. A new voice in the ear for Lewis Hamilton for this race, at least. Carlos Santi was with him in pre-season testing. Ricardo Adami was his engineer last year. There's been a change there, but still no permanent race engineer lined up for Lewis Hamilton for the remainder of the season. So another logistical challenge that he's going to have to get on top of off circuit.
Yeah, and if we go back to the front here, George Russell now 5.2 seconds behind Hamilton. If you remember, there was a surprised radio call from Lewis Hamilton when he was 10 seconds behind after the VSC and the first round of pit stops. He's now got that down to 5 seconds. I don't think George Russell's going to be too worried about closing that gap that quickly. He has just set the fastest lap of the race, but he's just eking away, keeping efficient, making sure he looks after his tyres, looks after his energy management in the right way, and he knows he's got a better car than that Ferrari. He also knows the Ferrari absolutely has to make a pit stop, and they potentially don't.
Yeah, lap 22 of 58. The two Ferraris who lead this Grand Prix have not pitted. Charles Leclerc ahead of Lewis Hamilton. Then comes George Russell, Antonelli and Lando Norris, the top 5, with Verstappen in 6th, followed by Arvid Lindblad. Then it's Ollie Behrman in 8th. Bortoleto's now up to 9th, with Pierre Gasly just getting past Esteban Ocon inside the top 10. Those are where your points are handed out. 25 for the win, all the way down to 1 point for 10th. Ocon is 11th ahead of the two Williams cars, Sainz and Albon. Lawson is 14th. Colapinto is 15th, with the one remaining Cadillac of Sergio Perez in 16th. Lance Stroll 17th, and last of the runners for Aston Martin, we have lost Valtteri Bottas's Cadillac, Fernando Alonso's Aston Martin, Hadjar's Red Bull, Piastri's McLaren and Hulkenberg's Audi. 17 cars remain in this race.
So if you're Ferrari right now, you haven't made a pit stop when almost everyone else around you has under the VSC, the virtual safety car. They are on their original set of medium tyres, 23 laps in. They're approaching what we think would be the limit of performance coming from those medium tyres. Maybe around 25 laps would be about what we would expect to push them to the absolute upper limit. So perhaps their only option here is to give such an offset in tyre strategy. So run as deep as they can, try and look after the tyres for as long as they can and push them longer than perhaps they expected to be able to have a fresher set of tyres, albeit the hard tyres, at the end of this Grand Prix, and just offset the performance that way. They haven't got a car that's as quick as the Mercedes of George Russell, certainly not in his hands. If they can offset the tyres, give themselves a bit fresher rubber, maybe that will help them.
Just listening to the sounds of George Russell's Mercedes power unit, you'll hear an awful lot of different sounds across this season, across this race, coming from various different engines and the suppliers of them, the likes of Ferrari, Mercedes, Red Bull, Ford and Audi as well, bringing and building their own engine along with Honda, all with their distinct sounds, all with different variations of being able to recharge and fill their batteries back up, whether that's through braking or being only on the throttle in a partial manner, lifting and coasting into a corner, or being full throttle and still being able to harvest power to the MGUH as well. So it certainly is complicated, and a lot of technologically advanced systems to get your heads around for a driver to adapt to. Up in the commentary box is myself, Harry Benjamin. I'm joined by the former McLaren mechanic Mark Priestley. Down in the paddock, keeping her eyes on the ground for us, is Jenny Gow.
Yes, and I've conversation with Pirelli talking about the tyres. They reckon it's possible to get those medium tyres, having had two virtual safety car periods, up to maybe laps 30, 35. That could be a real game changer for Ferrari. Maybe they've worked that out themselves.
Quite possibly. I mean, tyres, really, we have kind of almost ignored them so far this weekend because we've been getting our heads around all of the new engine management systems. But worth noting, the tyres are different this year. Pirelli bringing narrower tyres, less grip, easier to slide, a little bit narrower at the front, a little bit narrower at the back as well.
Yeah, and I tell you one, while we're talking about tyres, Lewis Hamilton has got a little bit of graining on the left front tyre. Now, we haven't seen an awful lot of graining over the course of this weekend, but it has occurred with some cars and some drivers. That's when the surface of the tyre just starts to bauble up into tiny little balls of rubber, because you're sliding that tyre across the tarmac, you're overheating the surface, and as those little baubles form on the top of the tyre, it becomes slippery, enables the car to slide more, and the process continues itself. So that's something you can drive through it, you can clean it up by driving in a certain way, but that costs you, of course, lap time. As Jenny said, their only hope here is to run very, very long, and I think even with that, they've got a very fast George Russell closing them down now with a gap down to 3 seconds, the Mercedes behind that second Ferrari. So I don't think, no matter how long Ferrari go into this race, I still don't think they've got anything that can fight the Mercedes.
They're going to come out 20 seconds behind, basically, and even with a tyre offset, it's hard to imagine they can close that up, but let's wait and see.
That's the voice of the BBC's F1 correspondent, Andrew Benson. A lot of drivers under investigation at the moment. Lawson and Perez for their ding-dong a little earlier on. And now Pierre Gasly and Esteban Ocon, who also made contact down at turn 3 a few moments ago, with Gasly sliding down the inside of Ocon. Now Charles Leclerc has just been told on the radio to box. We're going to get a pit stop, the first for Ferrari, and it's our race leader, Charles Leclerc, who will be coming in momentarily, heads round the final corner, the left-hander, then peels into the right-hand side, which mirrors the final corner. It starts to get narrow as he works his way between the barriers, slows down, hits the pit limiter at 80 kilometers per hour, and now trundles down the pit lane, peels into his grid spot. He's greeted by the front jackman. He's lifted up off his wheels. It's a quick stop from the Ferrari team, and it's a set of hard tyres for Charles Leclerc as he's released back into this race.
Yeah, it's a good stop from Ferrari. The wheels and tyres are a little bit smaller, therefore a little bit lighter this year, so that's easier for the mechanics to start throwing them around in those pit stops. But a challenge this year that we didn't have last year, we've got an extra 2 cars in the pit lane. meaning that the gaps between each of the pit boxes are around about 1.5 meters less than they would have been this time last year, and that means the drivers have to file in and out of those in slightly tighter confines, and that can compromise your overall pit stop time. So there are new challenges, both in a positive sense in pit stops, but also ones that might cost you time as well.
2.2 seconds for that pit stop for Ferrari's Charles Leclerc. So that means Hamilton takes over as race leader. Leclerc is fed out in 4th place behind Antonelli, behind George Russell, who is only 1.7 seconds behind Lewis Hamilton, yet to hit. More action from race control. Esteban Ocon's been noted for driving unnecessarily slowly. The turn 11 incident involving Perez and Lawson, forcing another driver off the track. That is having no further action. The race stewards actually ahead of this race announcing they're going to be a lot more lenient, I think, when it comes to judging racing incidents and things that occur during a Grand Prix, handing out penalties and penalty points. They are going to take into account factors which have long been pushed by the drivers, and I think a little bit of common sense proving fruitful on that case.
So still a little bit of graining on the left front tyre of Lewis Hamilton, but he's opted not to pit in the lap that followed his teammate Charles Leclerc's pit stop. He's gone round for another lap, but it has meant that he's now got George Russell in the Mercedes just 1.3 seconds and visibly closer, right up behind the Ferrari now, just around a second. He's going to get that access to the overtake mode. We mentioned it earlier on. It's activated in a very similar way to DRS, so when you're within a second of the car that you're chasing at certain zones and a detection point on the track, that's just before the penultimate corner of this particular lap here in Albert Park, he'll then be able to deploy that energy that he has in his battery for longer down the straight that follows, and that's the way you utilise that system to aid you in overtaking now in 2026.
Yeah, there's also another attack and defence tool being brought in for this year, and that is the boost button which drivers have available to them on their steering wheels, and that is a button that when you press it, it activates and uses maximum power from the engine and the battery. You can use it to attack, you can also use it to defend, but only if you have enough battery left in the tank, and allows you to recharge an extra 0.5 megajoules and generates that additional electrical power that allows you to essentially sustain a higher speed for longer.
Yeah, they actually had that system on board the cars last year, and slightly confusingly, it was called overtake button last year. Now it's called the boost button. It's effectively what the team can use, as you rightly say, to deploy all of that available power when they need it, but it does rely on you having a battery that has energy in it, and that comes down to the drivers and the systems on board to manage this harvesting process, recharging the battery multiple times around the lap. As we see George Russell now right up behind the lead Ferrari of Lewis Hamilton, right underneath the rear wing, and I think we're going to see an attempted overtake any moment now.
Yeah, let's have a little watch of this then. Lewis Hamilton leads this race in the middle of the racing line, gets oh so close to the front right of George Russell by the time they get to the flick of turn 9, through the left-hander, out through the right as the sun beats down on the silver arrows of the Mercedes, which now retakes the lead of this Grand Prix. Russell up in first, Hamilton second, Antonelli third, with Leclerc and Norris the top 5.
Yeah, so what we see actually, what's notable, I think, is that we've got different cars, of course. Every team designing their own cars, as Lewis Hamilton now does file into the pit lane for his pit stop. The teams designing their own cars, and just looking at the Ferrari and the Mercedes, they're quicker at different phases around the lap. So it looks like the Ferrari is very, very good at its harvesting, its deployment, utilising its deployment from its battery in a better way perhaps than the Mercedes at times around this lap. But the Mercedes very, very quick through the faster sections of this racetrack, seemingly efficient in an aerodynamic sense that perhaps the Ferrari isn't. So Lewis Hamilton emerging from the pits now, right behind his teammate Charles Leclerc, which is the way they were before it all began.
Okay, I think the one stop is viable.
Copy that.
That is from George Russell, thinking a one-stop is viable. Then on his hard tyre, out in the front, has already made that one pit stop. Can he go to the end now? Hamilton comes out of his pit stop in fourth, behind Charles Leclerc, who's third. Antonelli is second. Now, I have seen an Aston Martin re-enter the fray. Jenny Gow, what more do we know?
Yes, Fernando Alonso is back in this race in some form. They did a tweak to his car. It took a while, and now he's gone back out on the soft tyres. So it's plus 10 laps, but they're using this as a test session, obviously, to see what that car can do. They're down on running So it doesn't really matter, they're never going to win, but this is valuable.
Yeah, it certainly is. Stroll, who has also been through the pits and back out again, both on the soft tyre. Aston Martin's the last classified cars. Stroll 17th, Alonso back out there in 18th, so we're back up to 18 cars in this race.
Yeah, and for Aston Martin, that is valuable because, A, this is a brand new power unit like it is for everybody, but Honda, who make the power unit for Aston Martin, have only Aston Martin as a team using that particular power unit. If you look at Mercedes, that Mercedes team have their own cars. They also supply McLaren, they're supplying Alpine this year. So they have multiple points where learning and data is coming in every time to get cars on track. At Aston Martin, where they desperately need learning, they've only got the actual Aston Martins, and they've been so unreliable, they've not been collecting anything in terms of data. So getting the car back on track for them will be really valuable. Just going back to the George Russell message a moment ago where he said the one stop looks viable. That's viable partly because he has got a great car, a lot of performance, and if you have a good car, it means you're better in almost every aspect, including tyre management and energy deployment. But he's also now got a considerable gap behind him. His teammate Antonelli around 7 seconds back. The two Ferraris have dropped away, having just made their pit stop, so he can now go about the rest of this race, managing quite carefully the usage of those tyres, the hard tyres that he now wants to see to the end of the Grand Prix. He's not under much in the way of pressure, so he's going to be able to manage that way better than he would be if he had a Ferrari in his rearview mirrors.
Lap 30 of 58 now ticking over for lap 31 as George Russell crosses the line to lead this Grand Prix, 6.4 seconds clear of his teammates Kimi Antonelli. Then come the two Ferraris, Leclerc and Hamilton. Lando Norris is 5th ahead of Max Verstappen in 6th. Arvid Lindblad 7th ahead of Behrman. Then it's Bortoletto and Gasly, the top 10. They are your point scorers, followed by Esteban Ocon in 11th. The two Williams of Albon and Sainz, with Lawson in 14th. Franco Colapinto is down in 15th, only ahead of the Cadillac of Perez and the two Aston Martins. And Jenny, I believe there's news on Franco Colapinto.
Yeah, I've just realised actually that Franco Colapinto hasn't stopped for tyres. It shows that it's been into the pit lane, that was to serve a stop-go penalty. So it's still going around on his original tyres, which gives us a clue as to how many laps you can do on those hard tyres with a full fuel tank, if you want. And now lap 31, so Russell might be onto something there.
Yeah, good spot, Jenny. Colapinto started on the hard tyre, started this race down in 16th, now in 15th, has served his stop-go penalty for a start procedure issue and is still out there. Last lap around from Colapinto, 126.4 compared to those around him, 125.6 for Lawson ahead, 126.9 for Perez behind. So it's worth keeping an eye on for Colapinto just to see how much he can eke out of that hard tyre.
Yeah, if we take the two Aston Martins out of the picture for a moment, given that they're in some sort of testing phase more than anything else here, everyone else in the entire field, apart from Max Verstappen, is now on the hard tyre. So Verstappen running very well, running quickly, still delivering good lap times, and he's up into P6, having started all the way down at the back. The question for him is just how far can he go on these tyres? If what we believe to be true and what George Russell has suggested, the hard tyre will get everybody to the end of the race, certainly in the hands of the Mercedes driver, is Verstappen going to have to stop one more time and find himself catapulted back towards the back again?
At 32 of 58, just saw a message come up from George Russell, feeling the wind slightly and talking about, 25 kph wind gusts being felt. How much of an impact can wind have on these Formula One cars?
Well, it can have a lot. Last year it would have had more, and that's partly because we've got less downforce on these cars. The wings are smaller, the floors are smaller, the cars themselves are smaller, so they are slightly less affected in that sense by gusts. But it's never a comfortable feeling from a driver because it affects the downforce. You might go into a corner with a predictable amount, or what you think is a predictable level of downforce and therefore grip, and if the wind changes or gusts, that can dramatically change, either positively or negatively, either giving you more grip or losing you grip, and that can of course unsettle the car into a corner.
Lando Norris, the reigning world champion, in 5th, being hunted down by Max Verstappen. We're getting a nice look at the difference in battery power. Let's hear from Antonelli first.
We're thinking of going to the end, but let's know what you think about tyres.
That's going to be brave.
Okay, copy, we'll monitor.
Pete Bonington talking to Kimi Antonelli there, and Antonelli not feeling as confident about a one stop as perhaps his teammate or indeed his team.
Yeah, and this is, partly what this year is going to come down to. If we think that Mercedes have a dominant car, and right now they definitely do, if that continues throughout this season, there's a real opportunity for them to challenge for a world title. I know it's very early days and we shouldn't be talking about champions just yet, but if that turns out to be the case, the experience that George Russell has over Kimi Antonelli could well be the deciding factor. George Russell knows how to look after tyres.
Could you do 26 laps on a medium?
No, not at this rate, because I just throw the tyres up to 10.
Lando Norris not feeling comfortable to do 26 laps on a medium tyre. He's destroying tyres after 10 laps. So Norris struggling with tyre issues out there. Verstappen is within a second of Lando Norris. He will have overtake mode available to him when we get to the activation point, which is just before the final corner. We're in turn 11 right now through the right-hander, the 90-degree right-hander that then curves you through turn 12. You flick the car back over to the right-hand side, brake off camber through the left-hander, squeezes you around the final corner of turn 14, back onto the start-finish straight as the sun continues to shine here through the clouds over Albert Park and across the line for lap 34 of 58. Norris still holding on to that position of 5th ahead of Verstappen.
And speaking of Verstappen, virtual safety car, we've got an incident somewhere around the track. We haven't seen it yet, but we've got a virtual safety car. Everyone now holding their positions, slowing down for prescribed speed on the car. There's some debris on the circuit. Waiting for a camera angle or a replay to see what's happened, but somebody looks like they've had an incident and hit the wall. We've got marshals on the circuit.
I don't like that, even on the virtual safety car. I think it's a bit of front wing, potentially a bit of carbon fibre off a car. I wonder if it's Gabriel Bortoleto. No, it's Sergio Perez. Bortoleto's come into the pits. We're getting a look at Sergio Perez coming through as a bit of carbon fibre flies off from the underside of that car. And that was heading towards turn 9, so down Lakeside Drive, but the marshals have already been to clear it, so quick work from them. I had noticed that Bortoleto had come into the pits. He's back out again. The two Williams and Liam Lawson have both pitted under that virtual safety car, perhaps expecting it to be a bit longer, but they have now all come in, and that puts Lindblad 7th ahead of Behrman, Gasly and Ocon now the top 10.
Yeah, and Verstappen still now behind Lando Norris, the world champion, but he did manage to close right up as they came out of virtual safety car. Verstappen won't take too long, I don't think, on his medium tyres to get past a slightly struggling Lando Norris as he peels into the pits. So Lando in for a fresh set of tyres. He's going onto those mediums. He was asked the question, can he get to the end of this Grand Prix? The answer was no, but he's been put on them anyway.
Yeah, Norris, so I think he's been struggling out there on his tyres, qualified in 6th. Only one McLaren in this race, Oscar Piastri, crashed out on the way to the grid. He hits his marks outside his pit box, does Lando Norris. He's released by his engineers and mechanics back into the fast lane and out in 8th position on the medium tyre.
And this plays nicely into the hands of Max Verstappen. We heard Lando Norris, we've heard Kimi Antonelli so far. They've all been asked, can you get to the end on these tyres? And the feeling is that they can't. Now Max Verstappen, we know, has to stop again. He's on that medium tyre. We're pretty sure that tyre that was put on a long time ago now in this Grand Prix won't get to the end. So Max has to stop again. But now it's starting to look like everyone around him might also have to. So maybe Verstappen and Red Bull have played a bit of a blinder here. He's up in P5, having started last.
Yeah, we always expect Max Verstappen to carve his way through the field, but let's see how this one turns out. Lap 36 of 58, Russell leads for Mercedes ahead of Antonelli by 6 seconds. Then comes Charles Leclerc in the Ferrari. Hamilton is 4th, Verstappen 5th, Norris, Lindblad, Behrman, Gasly and Ocon the top 10. They are your point scorers. Bortoleto is in 11th for Audi ahead of Albon. Colapinto yet to pit up to 13th. Then comes Lawson, Sainz and Perez the top 16 with Stroll down in 17th. Fernando Alonso looks like he's come back into the pits having, we thought retired from this race. They sent him back out again. But Jenny, he's now back in the pits.
Yes, he's back in the pits. Whether they send him out again, who knows? But he's been in here for about 2 minutes so far and still counting.
Thanks, Jen. We'll see if they get him back out again as they continue to run a bit of a test session and just try and get as many laps under their belt to try and figure out where they sit when it comes to at least their chassis and actual car design, while Honda try and figure out all the gremlins involved with their power unit.
Yeah, just thinking about the two Mercedes out front at the moment. Russell with a comfortable gap, 6.4 seconds, and even more comfortable because it's his teammate behind him. Behind Antonelli, a further 9 seconds back to the front Ferrari. So Mercedes, on the face of it, look like they're in a really comfortable position. But I can assure you that both of the drivers in the car, the engineers on the pit wall, and everyone in that garage and beyond will be far from comfortable. This is such a journey into the unknown, and even at this point, with the massive lead they have, the pace advantage they have, every single person in that Mercedes organisation will be nervous right now. Is something still going to go wrong? Is there going to be a glitch in the system we haven't found yet? Is there going to be a tweak that somebody made that has some sort of knock-on consequence that we just don't know about? So nobody comfortable, despite their seemingly comfortable position in this Grand Prix.
News on Fernando Alonso, Jenny Gow.
Yes, lap 37, and Fernando Alonso is now officially retired from this race. Will take no further part. And on top of that, Lance Stroll and the other Aston Martin has just come in, and he's stayed in the pit lane. Whether I'll retire him now is yet to be seen.
Thanks, Jenny. Hashtag BBC F1 if you're listening to us for the first Grand Prix of the Formula One season. What do you make of this new Formula One era that we are embarking on? Liam has said on hashtag BBC F1, only Alonso could retire twice in the same race. So almost not the best of starts for him. But he's been in fairly chipper spirits, all things considered, so far this weekend. There is an uphill battle to find there. But throughout the course of practice into qualifying, with such little lap times and this limited mileage, well, from being about 4 seconds off the pace, suddenly they were 2.5 seconds off the pace. So he was fairly optimistic about that, at least.
Well, yeah, he was clutching at straws, really, in terms of looking for any glimmer of hope. One of their biggest issues, actually, is the supply of components, particularly around the battery, coming in from that Honda power unit supply. They are so limited on those because they've had so much reliability, so many of them being damaged, and they go from here straight on to China next weekend, where they need those components to be able to run. We think they are down to their last 2 batteries, and one of the big risks during this Grand Prix, and one of the perhaps reasons they haven't continued to run all the way to the end, is they just cannot risk damaging these remaining 2 energy stores, the 2 batteries, because doing that will mean they simply can't take part in the Chinese Grand Prix.
Lap 38 of 58, and this is the Australian Grand Prix. Russell leads 6.4 seconds, the gap between himself and his Mercedes teammate Kimi Antonelli. Then comes Leclerc and Hamilton, with Verstappen in 5th. Lindblad is 6th as Lando Norris steams past Ollie Behrman's Haas for 7th place down the run towards the right-hander of turn 3. And as we get to turn number 5, the scene of his teammates' crash on the way to the grid. Norris is clear and starts to chase down Arvid Lindblad's Racing Bulls. Behrman 8th ahead of his teammate Ocon. Gasly rounds out the top 10, and we're about to get a little look at something from Esteban Ocon, passing the Alpine of Pierre Gasly, or trying to at least, through the turn 9 and 10 flick. And Gasly only has 1 flashing light working on his rear, then the other one comes back into life, the flashing lights symbolising and making drivers behind aware when a car in front might be down on power due to recharging techniques. And eventually, by the time he gets to turn 11, Ocon goes through on Gasly for 9th.
Yeah, so we're down to 16 cars in this Grand Prix from the original 2 that turned up this week, 22 rather, that turned up this weekend. We were expecting a number of retirements, and that's exactly what we've got. And we are still 39 laps out of 58 with some way to go. So one of the sort of quirks of the tweaks as Lando Norris makes a move on Arvid Lindblad going into turn 1. Nice and calm and under control, nice and smooth from the world champion. One of the quirks of these cars, if you like, is that so much of this power now comes from the electric motors. You get massive instant torque with that electric motor. As who's this we're seeing here?
Gabriel Bortoleto.
So he's making an overtake on Esteban Ocon, I think that was. That puts him up to P10 and back into the points. Massive instant torque from the electric motors. Anyone at home who drives or has driven an electric car, even a hybrid car, will know just how impactful your right foot on the accelerator can be with that instant torque. Now in Formula One terms, we get that now, but in an increased fashion. Really, like half of the car's performance, half of the car's power coming from that electric motor instantly, which means you've got so much more power than you have grip on these smaller, smaller contact patch of the tyre. So balancing that coming out of a corner, and it may be one of the reasons that Oscar Piastri ended up in the wall on the way to the grid. Getting the tiniest bit too trigger happy with your right foot can spin the rear tyres up, spin the car round, and you can become a passenger very quickly.
It's just after 4 o'clock in the afternoon here in Melbourne, just after 5 o'clock in the morning back in the UK. You're listening to 5 Live F1 and coverage of the first Grand Prix of the year from Albert Park in Melbourne. George Russell leads this Grand Prix. Kimi Antonelli, his teammate, is second. It was a front row lockout for Mercedes, and that it continues to be. But the lead did keep changing in the early stages with frequent overtakes, and after lightning starts from both Ferraris of Lewis Hamilton and Charles Leclerc, who sit third and fourth. Leclerc ahead of Lewis Hamilton. Oscar Piastri, the home hero, did not take to the start after crashing on his way to the grid. We've also lost Audi's Nico Hülkenberg, who never took to the start. Isaac Hadjar caused an early virtual safety car when suspected engine issues saw him pull to the side of the road. That led to some early pit stops, particularly for the two Mercedes, whilst the Ferrari stayed out and did not pit. We've also lost the Cadillac of Valtteri Bottas and the two Aston Martins, who continue to struggle with their Honda engines, Fernando Alonso and Lance Stroll, out of this race. It is lap 41 of 58 as we get to grips with this new way of racing in Formula One, with a new era embarked upon, the biggest regulation overhaul in Formula One's history, with a near 50-50 split between internal combustion and battery power powering these Formula One engines. It is Russell, Antonelli, Leclerc, Hamilton, the top four. Max Verstappen, who started down in 20th after crashing in qualifying, has worked his way up into 5th. Then comes Lando Norris. Oliver Behrman, the British driver in his second year for Haas, is 7th, ahead of the British rookie Arvid Lindblad, who's currently on course to score points in 8th, ahead of Pierre Gasly's Alpine, who's just got through on Gabriel Bortoletto's Audi, up into 9th, but I think they've just swapped back positions as well. That is your top 10. It's Harry Benjamin with you up in the commentary box. Alongside me is the former McLaren mechanic Mark Priestley. Mark, what are we? What did I say? 42 laps into this new era of racing. What are you making of Formula One?
What am I making of it? There's a big question. I mean, unpredictable. That side of it I like. We've got no sort of clarity really on exactly what's going to happen, even this far into a race, with the two Mercedes so far out in front. I don't think any of us, and particularly them, is Lindblad on the radio.
Let's try get him one more time.
So that's the one rookie in this field, young Brit Arvid Lindblad, chasing down Oliver Behrman. So he's been told to go for it, see if he can get him back. The two Mercedes out front are sitting there pretty, seemingly at the front, but no one really knows what's going to happen at this point. Verstappen peels into the pits. I was just about to say before you came to me, his lap times had started to tail away on the medium tyre. He now goes back onto the hard tyre. That'll see him to the end of this race. It does drop him down positions. The question's going to be, how can Lando Norris fare until the end of this Grand Prix on a set of mediums? He put them on a lot later than Verstappen, but that's a real battle. Behind the top four, the two Mercedes, the two Ferraris, who's going to come next? Is it Lando? Is it Max Verstappen?
Yeah, intriguing. Verstappen peels out in 6th spot behind Norris. Let's say good afternoon once again to our reporter down on the ground, Jenny Gow. You've got eyes up and down the paddock. What's the general consensus so far from what we've seen with just 16 cars remaining in this first race of the year, Jen?
Well, I think people have been excited by what's happening out on track. It's a bit frenetic, isn't it? Especially the start. But most people are really sad, basically, for Oscar Piastri, the home hero, who wanted to overturn the curse of Australian drivers who have not stepped on the podium or won this Grand Prix, and he hasn't been able to do it. Some people have left already, so disheartened are they, because Piastri isn't taken to the grid because he crashed out before it even started. But I think people are buoyed. A new season, lots of fun out there. It is a fun race, and if you're having a sweepstake about how many finishes there'll be, it's 16 at the moment, and no red flags, interestingly.
No, none yet, but we are still heading our way towards 58 laps. We're currently on the 43rd. That's happening right now on 5 Live F1. This is setting us up for a busy day here on the station. Jeanette Quachi and Stefan Powell with you from 7 for Sunday breakfast. Then we're building up to the day's FA Cup football action on 5 Live Sport with Steve Crossman from midday. 1:30 live commentary of Port Vale v Sunderland in the 5th round of the FA Cup. Then at 4:30, our attention turns to Leeds United against Norwich City. That's all still to come at the conclusion of the first Grand Prix of the season, where 16 cars remain in contention. Only the top 10 score points. But one thing's for certain, George Russell and Mercedes, having had an imperious qualifying yesterday, on course to take the spoils from the first race of the year.
Yeah, they've certainly come out of the blocks, haven't they, well, at the start of this season. They've got a great car, great power unit. They've managed to knit that together well out of the same facilities back in the UK of Brixworth and Brackley. They've done an incredible job so far, and we're starting to get this pecking order formed. We didn't know what the order was going to look like. Even after pre-season testing, we always thought Mercedes had a very quick car. Were they holding back performance in testing? Well, we've seen it unleashed this weekend, and at the moment nobody can touch the two Mercs. Behind that, Ferrari look like clear second place runners right now, currently in 3rd and 4th, Leclerc ahead of Hamilton. What we haven't really seen is the true pace of Max Verstappen. He had an incident in qualifying, a technical incident that locked the rear wheels of the car and spat him into the wall, which meant he started this race all the way down the back. He's worked his way up to P6, and I'm pretty sure he's going to get Lando Norris before the end, which will bring him up to P5 and best of the rest behind the two Mercs and the two Ferraris. So I'd like to see Verstappen on a clean weekend. How can he get it amongst those Ferraris? Has he got enough to challenge the Mercedes? Those are still some unknowns at this point.
Having a nice battle for the final point at the moment between the two Frenchmen in the field, former teammates Gasly and Ocon. Ocon almost a second back though, but crucially he is within a second, so he's able to get overtake mode, that option that allows the driver to deploy a little bit of extra battery power to try and catch up to the car in front. But at the moment, Gasly able to fend off Ocon. Alpine switching from Renault to Mercedes power this year, and so I suppose you'd expect all the Mercedes power teams. Well, why aren't they all up there with the Mercedes Works team? Why aren't McLaren there? Why aren't Williams there? Why aren't Alpine up there?
Well, there's a few reasons. I touched on one earlier on, in that Mercedes, as in the Works team, had the advantage of being able to design the whole package together. That means they have access to all of the information earlier than everybody else. They can design the two as one and make sure they work seamlessly together. That's a big advantage for them. They utilised that to great success back in 2014 at the beginning of the hybrid era. It's looking like they've done it again. The likes of the customer teams like McLaren, they've only just got for this weekend the latest iteration of that Mercedes power unit, because Mercedes themselves were proving it in the second week of pre-season testing. So it's another delay for the customer teams in terms of getting to grips with this technology.
And Verstappen is pushing hard. He knows now's his best chance on you.
That is what Lando Norris has just been told over the radio by his engineer, Will Joseph. The pressure's on for Norris then.
Yeah, it really is, and I think he's absolutely right. Verstappen can see this as an opportunity. He's on a much, much fresher set, albeit of hard tyres versus Lando Norris's mediums. But those mediums have now done quite a few laps on the McLaren, and the Verstappen Red Bull with the fresh hard tyres on, I think is going to close down Lando Norris and probably find a way past. We heard Lando Norris saying earlier on it was going to be a real struggle to get to the end on the medium set of tyres. We may well find that coming to fruition, and Verstappen smelling blood as he closes in now just about a second behind the world champion.
About 46 of 58. George Russell leads by almost 6 seconds to his teammate Kimi Antonelli. Charles Leclerc and Lewis Hamilton, the two Ferraris, 3rd and 4th. Norris is 5th and feeling the heat from Max Verstappen behind. Ollie Behrman looking good in 7th for Haas, with Arvid Lindblad on debut for Racing Bulls, the British rookie, down at 8th, ahead of Gabriel Bortoleto. Going well for Audi in their first race as a full works team in Formula 1 in 9th, and Pierre Gasly at the moment still able to hold on to that final point in 10th. Ocon is 11th ahead of Albon. Then comes Liam Lawson, who really hasn't been able to recover since his abysmal start of the race. He's down at 13th ahead of Franco Colapinto, and I think Colapinto is still out there on the same set of hard tyres that he started this race on, so he's really going well into this race and praying for some kind of safety car, I think, right about now. Sainz is 15th, with Sergio Perez doing a great job for Cadillac, last in this Grand Prix in 16th, but crucially still out there and running.
Yeah, exactly, and they've got to take something from that. I think if you look at Audi, tale of two halves there, isn't it? I'm disappointed that they didn't get Hulkenberg off the line. He had a failure on the way to the grid. But if you look at the other side of the garage, if they can score points with Bortoleto in their first race as the full-blown Audi squad, I think they'll be very, very happy with that. Front and the midfield is a great place for them to start this season. They can start to build from there. I think they'll be pretty pleased if that can remain the same with 9-10 laps to go. 10 laps to go.
Yeah, absolutely. A bit of pit lane action as well as Carlos Sainz comes in. He's had a pretty tough weekend as well. Didn't get any running in qualifying or the majority of the practice session, with a lot of energy recovering system failures on that Williams car, and what is an overweight Williams as well by quite some margin, and costing them a huge amount of time. They were late to deliver the car, late to the Barcelona shakedown. They're on the back foot. The team that scored podiums last year with Carlos Sainz and finished in 5th. Carlos Sainz is back out there again though, as he comes into the pits and rejoins. So no Aston Martin. Stroll and Alonso retiring. Bottas in the other Cadillac retired. Isaac Hadjar with suspected engine problems had to peel to the side of the road, which is a shame for Hadjar, having qualified 3rd. Piastri, a big story, having crashed out on his way to the grid in rather peculiar circumstances, still not able to fully pin that down onto the cause, as it, on the face of it, looked like driver error. But with these new cars, can't say 100% for sure it was, with Nico Hulkenberg, as Mark was saying, not even taking to the start in his Audi, having technical issues.
Yeah, 2 points I want to make. One is that if you're listening to this at home, if you're watching thinking, well, we've got the order, we know who the world champion's going to be, it's George Russell, they're so far ahead, it's all over. I would say hold off on that. This is the beginning of a whole new era of Formula One. And the position that every one of these teams is at right now is just a starting point. And because it's all so new, there's a huge opportunity to make development gains. And that's exactly what's going to happen, particularly through the first part of this season. Large chunks of time are going to be found with upgrades and developments coming to races thick and fast as the teams start to get to grips with the technology. They see what others around them are able to do and they start to implement similar solutions themselves. So I can see the order shuffling up and down the grid as the season rolls on, so it's not set in stone. And the other point that I was going to make was Ferrari.
I thought you forgot it.
I did forget, yeah, well spotted. I forgot and it came back to me. Ferrari, we questioned Ferrari's strategy at that early part of the race when they didn't make a pit stop, when almost everyone else around them did under that virtual safety car. Now, I still think that may have been the wrong decision, but actually to finish 3rd and 4th, I don't think they've got a car capable of chasing and fighting with the two Mercedes on this particular weekend. So maybe they've still come out of this, if it remains as it is right now, with the best result perhaps that they could have found anyway. So perhaps let's not be too critical of Ferrari. I don't think they could have done too much better as things stand than finishing behind the lead pair, if it stays this way, of the two Mercedes cars.
And those lightning starts really did come to fruition for both Leclerc and Hamilton, who started 4th and 7th respectively and really shocked up to the grid, with Leclerc taking the lead by the time they got to turn number 1. Right, 16 cars remain in this race. We've spoken a little bit about the Alpine of Franco Colapinto. He came in early doors to the pit lane, but only for a stop-go penalty, was running very long on some hard tyres. Jenny, you've got a Colapinto update for us.
I do. He's finally come in to switch over to a different tyre. That 49 he came in, he boxed soft tyres on. Let's see what he can do with those with 8 laps to go.
Yeah, he's got a bit of a distance though to cover behind Liam Lawson. He's over 40 seconds behind the Kiwi in the Racing Bulls. So it's a long afternoon for the Argentine in the Alpine.
Yeah, I think as you rightly pointed out a few moments ago, he was that strategy was reliant upon a late safety car, wasn't it, to sort of come in for a cheap pit stop, still remain in touch with the cars in front, but still stick those faster soft tyres on. It hasn't worked out that way. So yeah, it was a gamble, a roll of the dice. Doesn't look at this point like it's going to pay off, but we have 8 laps to go, and as we keep saying, anything can still happen.
Anything can still happen, and just when you think Aston Martin's day is done, another one emerges back into this race. Lance Stroll's car has returned, was returned to the garage, and the team have made some adjustments, and he now rejoins this Grand Prix. So that's good to see from Aston Martin, very much in test mode.
A pair of phoenixes, aren't they? Just keep re-emerging. Max Verstappen is chasing down Lando Norris, about 6/10 behind the McLaren of the world champion, and closing. Verstappen on the hard tyres that he put on just about 3 or 4 or 5 laps ago Lando Norris on a set of medium tyres that he put on about 3 or 4 laps before that. So we talked about Lando struggling to get these tyres to the finish. He's got 7 laps to get them there, but what's likely to happen is the performance is going to tail away. The more he's being pushed by Max Verstappen, the more he's going to have to take life out of those, and Verstappen will be smelling blood. He's getting closer. Verstappen around about 7 tenths now, but it's ebbing and flowing as they utilise their battery packs and deploy that energy at different points around the circuit. Verstappen just, I think, biding his time, hoping that the tyre offset is going to work in his favour as Lando Norris's tyres begin to fade away over the next couple of laps.
Max Verstappen really closes up on the straight down towards turn 11, and then Lando Norris is able to start to pull away again through the corner, but crucially Norris able to look in his mirror and see, well, I have got a bit of a gap still, so I can afford just to maybe lift slightly earlier before the braking zone, recharge the battery a little bit more, but that gap is running out very quickly as we get to turn 1 again. Lap 51 now, 58. Norris in 5th, Verstappen chasing in 6th, and have to confess, these two possibly the most vocal out of the 22 drivers at their disdain's a bit of a harsh word, but they're not exactly the most positive about this new regulation of Formula 1.
No, they're not, and look, it is brand new, and as we touched on earlier on, I think it's very different for the drivers to what they've been used to, not just what they've been used to in recent Formula 1, but what they've been used to all the way through their career. It's a different way of driving, it's not flat-out racing, and look, you can argue that there's never been a generation of Formula 1 car where you've been flat-out from start to finish. You've always had to manage tyres or manage your engines and gearboxes and the technology, so those things are all true, balancing your fuel usage as well, so those things are all true about managing something on a Formula 1 car. It's just that this year it's gone to extreme levels, and I think some of the drivers, particularly those, and maybe there's a caveat to be made here, particularly those who are struggling, not liking it as much. If you ask George Russell, who put it on pole by an enormous margin and comfortably leads this race right now, he might be a bit happier.
Quite right. Never take a Formula 1 driver's word as gospel. Rule number 1, lap 52 and 58, Russell, Antonelli, the top 2, then it's Leclerc and Hamilton.
7 laps to go, keep pushing, doing well.
Yeah, leave it to me, thanks.
Nice warm exchange there from Lewis Hamilton to his engineer. Keep pushing, lead me to it, I know what I'm doing. He's ahead of Norris and Verstappen, who continue to do battle. Only one McLaren left in the field, and Oscar Piastri, the home hero, never really got going. The grandstand still fill with Australian fans, despite their man not being in this race. Let's hear from Piastri now.
Hey, Oscar, such disappointment. I can't even begin to imagine how and what you're feeling. Can you try and explain?
Pretty disappointed, obviously. Just a situation that shouldn't happen, obviously. I think we need to review a bit further on what exactly happened, but a combination of a few things. I think cold tyres, probably being a bit optimistic on the curb on the first lap, but also I had 100 kilowatts more power than what I expected, which is not insignificant. So I think if you put all of those together, I think if you have one or two of those things, then you can manage it. But when you put all of them together, it caught me by surprise.
I suppose the positive news is that there's another race weekend next weekend. But how do you pick yourself up after what's happened today?
I mean, just try and learn as much as I can. It's clearly been an interesting race. Just try and learn what I can.
Oscar Piastri speaking to Jenny Gow after crashing out on the way to the grid. So interesting there, Mark. We were watching it at the time. It was before we were on air, and we all screamed. In fact, quite a few of the commentary boxes were screaming. Nobody was on air yet. And couldn't believe it, because Oscar Piastri is a very good driver, and mistakes like that don't happen often. But it did look like driver error. But the 100 kilowatt surge in power is maybe something to hook onto here as an unexpected side effect of just how much they have to manage and learn with these new engines.
And I think that's one of the challenges that people are concerned about with this new regulation set, right? Because if you think about just this weekend alone, we've seen Verstappen have what on the face of it, to the untrained eye, looked like an uncharacteristic spin into the wall in qualifying. I mean, we know, because we know a bit about this sport, that wasn't just driver error. That was the systems, the complex systems that run this energy management, delivering braking to such a level that it locked the rear axle and he became a passenger. But to the untrained eye, to fans just switching on at home for the very first time, that looks like a 4-time world champion spinning off into the gravel trap under pressure. You can say the same for Oscar Piastri. That looked like simple driver error. There are so many systems that are hidden from view that the people watching and listening at home don't have access to. Even us, as commentators and pundits on this sport, we don't have access to all of these systems. So that's the point here. There are so many things that are hidden from view, and we don't have full visibility on, and yet have such a massive impact on the way these cars behave, and the drivers inside the cockpit are having to deal with that at different phases throughout the Grand Prix weekend. So I think we, as a sport, as the teams and the drivers, and us as broadcasters, have to work with this regulations to try and understand how we can best communicate what's happening, whether that's through graphics packages on TV, whether it's through having a deeper understanding as a fan when you watch this sport of exactly what the technology is this year. I think there are a number of things, and this is race weekend number 1 of this regulation cycle. There are a number of things I think we can all try and do to give us a deeper understanding, which might make the whole thing clearer.
And exactly, I think we're going to see a lot of development across the year. I mean, right now, up until 8th place, Arvid Lindblad, everybody's been lapped already. Lap 55 and 58, and everybody down from Franco Colapinto in 14th has had 2 laps or more put on them, which is not something we've seen in a while in Formula 1. And the fact, we're down to 18, 17, 16 cars, depending on how Lance Stroll's feeling once he comes back from the pits again. We haven't seen this level of reliability and the issues with it in quite some time in Formula 1.
No, and I'm not necessarily against that. I think Formula 1 should be technology being pushed to the very limit. But I suspect the problem with a lot of these cars that are failing and had issues is not necessarily that it's just being pushed to the limit, just that it's so brand new and still unpredictable at this point. So I don't think we want to see unpredictable failures like that, where even the teams and drivers don't know what's happening or why it's happened. Heard Piastri there just already saying he has no real explanation to why he got that surge or that spike in power. So I think as the teams get on top of this, as they become more familiar with it, all of those things will settle down. But I think there's just a long way to go, and I hope people are able to stay, open-minded to some extent with this. This is a huge undertaking, a massive shift in Formula 1 technology, biggest ever in history, as I think you said earlier on the show. Give everybody a little bit of time to get on top of it.
I think I've said that 3 or 4 times, Mark. Lap 56 to 58. Russell leads Antonelli by 4.6 seconds. Then comes Charles Leclerc in third. 1.9 seconds back is Lewis Hamilton. Starting to close slightly, still pushing out there. Wants that podium. Didn't get on the podium for the first time in his career all last year in a Grand Prix. Obviously won the sprint in China. He will be desperate to taste that champagne again. Yeah,
he will. And what we're in now really is a good old-fashioned tyre race. It's about who's looked after their tyres. We've only got 2 laps to go. So are we seeing a couple of the cars at the front? Because Antonelli closing on Russell. I suspect Russell just cruising now to a hopeful win. But in terms of Hamilton and Leclerc, we heard his engineer on the radio saying, look, keep pushing. You don't know what's going to happen. Go for it. Hamilton has the hammer down, and he's now 1.7 seconds behind his teammate and closing in. And you're right, he will smell an opportunity. He spent so much of last season behind his teammate in the results. He will not want to get off to that same start again. Now 1.4 seconds behind the lead Ferrari.
Yeah, behind Hamilton in 4th is Lando Norris in 5th, still holding about 2 seconds of a gap over Max Verstappen. Ollie Behrman has had a good weekend, good race in 7th for Haas. He's 11 seconds clear of Arvid Lindblad, who equally is having a brilliant weekend on debut for Racing Bulls. And as a rookie driver, Gabriel Bortoleto, though, is closing in on Lindblad. Less than a second between the Racing Bulls and Bortoleto's Audi. So that might be a little fight that we pick up on towards the end. Pierre Gasly holding that final point at the moment in 10th, but he's only a second ahead of his countryman and former teammate, now Haas driver Esteban Ocon in 11th. Then comes Alex Albon in 12th, who has equally got Liam Lawson for company in the Racing Bulls. Franco Colapinto is 14th, ahead of Carlos Sainz. Sergio Perez in the Cadillac still out there in 16th and running well, and should hopefully, I don't want to jinx it, be able to complete a race distance for Cadillac, operationally for the first time in the flesh. And Lance Stroll, having pitted several times while the team run a effective test session, is back out there in 17th. No Fernando Alonso, he's retired in order for the team to conserve parts. We go to China straight away next week. Valtteri Bottas in the Cadillac pulled over on the side of the road early doors. Isaac Hadjar with a suspected engine failure out in 20th position. Piastri never got going in this race, and neither did Nico Hülkenberg's Audi.
As they enter the final lap, Lewis Hamilton has just missed the detection point to be within 1 second to be able to use the overtake mode on these cars, where the extra energy is deployed for longer down the straights. He's going to get the slipstream effect behind the Ferrari, but he's still around just under a second now behind his teammate, but he wasn't at that crucial moment to activate the system. They've got a few corners, half a lap now, but Hamilton closing rapidly. Leclerc sliding the rear tyres, overheating them potentially, giving us a hint of opportunity to Hamilton, and if he's got any hope of taking it, he needs to do that in the next couple of corners.
Well, there's only one corner remaining for George Russell in his Mercedes as he peels out onto the start-finish straight. The checkered flag is waiting for George Russell, who wins the Australian Grand Prix and takes the first victory of the 2026 Formula One season. It's Mercedes 1 and 2, with Kimi Antonelli coming home in second. Charles Leclerc makes it third place for Ferrari, with Lewis Hamilton half a second away of the podium in fourth. It's Mercedes, though, who take the spoils in this new era of Formula One.
Yeah, the dream start for Mercedes, that really was. They could not have wished for anything else this weekend. Clear of the field, not really a challenge coming from anywhere. Ferrari were close at the beginning of this race, but faded away, and that really is a sign of where the performance is at this early stage of the season. Mercedes out on their own.
Yeah, looks like Lando Norris will take the flag in fifth ahead of Max Verstappen. Good recovery drive from the four-time world champion who crashed in qualifying, started at the back, worked his way up. Ollie Behrman, good points in seventh for the British driver for Haas. And what about Arvid Lindblad? Eighth place.
You ripper. Great job. Awesome drive. Awesome weekend. Well done, mate.
Woo! Very nice, very nice. I like this car, I like this engine. Great job.
That'll be the star on the front.
That'll be the three-pronged star on the front. Mercedes chassis, Mercedes engine, Mercedes win. And it's a sixth career win for George Russell. After years of being moulded by Mercedes at Williams, finally got his chance in the top team alongside Lewis Hamilton and what had been the dominant team, the race-winning team, the championship-winning team. He joined and they fell off the boil. For years, suddenly he was scrounging to get points, let alone podiums, and now he's back up front.
You boy. Nice work there, Kimi. Great recovery. Felt a little bit tense at times there, mate, but yeah, great job bringing it back.
Thank you, everyone. What a start of the year. Thank you.
What a start to the new era for Kimi Antonelli as well. He made it difficult for himself with a huge crash earlier on in practice on Saturday morning. The team worked so hard to get him out for qualifying, and he has rewarded them with second on the grid and second in the race.
Yeah, really solid drive from both of them. I think you're right, that was a big hiccup on Saturday in FP3 and could have cost them dearly, particularly given how much performance and potential they have. That was nearly put in jeopardy, but the team did an amazing job, as you say. But then Kimi himself did a fantastic job to deliver a qualifying lap under extreme pressure to put his car on the front row alongside his teammate. And from there, Mercedes as a team, both drivers have delivered an excellent performance today, controlled the field. Yes, they've got the best technology, but they still had to deliver, and it was huge pressure to do so.
Georgie, congratulations, well done. It's a good start, car and power unit, and the driver combination. Really good. Congratulations, really well done. We're all super thrilled.
Yeah, great job, everybody. Been a long time since we've been here, so very well deserved for all the efforts.
Team Principal Toto Wolff speaking to George Russell. Your Australian Grand Prix race winner. Antonelli second, Leclerc, Hamilton, Norris the top 5, Verstappen in 6th, Behrman in 7th. Lindblad becomes the 3rd youngest point scorer in Formula 1 history. Points on debut for the British driver. Audi get points on debut with Gabriel Bortoleto. Gasly nicks the final point for Alpine in 10th. Ocon just missed out. Albon 12th. Liam Lawson 13th. Franco Colapinto, who walks away with 14th and the fastest top speed of the race. 344 kilometres an hour. They'll take it. Carlos Sainz 15th. Perez sees the checkered flag in Cadillac's first Grand Prix as a Formula 1 team, 16th. And Lance Stroll saw the checkered flag as well for Aston Martin in 17th, albeit 15 laps down. We lost Fernando Alonso, Valtteri Bottas's Cadillac, Isaac Hadjar's Red Bull, Oscar Piastri's McLaren crashed before we even started, and Hülkenberg's Audi could not take to the start. 17 runners completing that Grand Prix. Mercedes, the best of them.
Yeah, they really were. And everybody else now in Formula 1 scratching their head, wondering where that huge chunk of performance is going to come from. What can they bring to their car? Even the other Mercedes-powered runners here, McLaren, have a lot of room, a lot of work to do to get themselves up on par with the Works Mercedes team. So lots of room for improvement, lots of effort. There's going to be a huge effort from lots of the teams to make this happen. But we only have 7 days until the next Grand Prix, so not a lot's going to happen between now and then.
So obviously we finished the race with big question marks over Ferrari's strategy. I've seen some replays which suggest it was very tight to call Leclerc in when the VSC was put out for the first time after Hadjar retired. They could have just done it if they'd been on their toes, which you could argue they should have been because Hadjar's car was beside the track. You could also argue they had another lap or two to still bring him in, not lose any time. If you look at the race result at the end, Russell wins by 15 seconds, but that was pretty much the gap when Leclerc came out. So I think Ferrari could definitely have contended for this win if they'd got their strategy right, which is encouraging after Russell was on pole by 0.8 of a second.
It's an interesting point. I wonder whether Mercedes were cruising to some extent. I mean, you've got to imagine with this brand new technology and you've got that comfortable lead, you are not pushing to the limit in those Mercedes, for the second half of this Grand Prix. But it's an interesting point. It would have been nice to see, and look, maybe that's a glimmer of hope. Moving on into the next race in China, a very different type of circuit. Maybe it's not as one-sided as we think.
Well, we'll hear from our top 3 shortly. They're going to be speaking to the 2009 World Champion, Jenson Button.
Congratulations, George. You just won the Australian Grand Prix, but not only that, you've also just won the first F1 race of the new era. How are you feeling?
Feeling incredible. It was a hell of a fight at the beginning. We knew it was going to be challenging. I got on the grid. I saw my battery level. I had nothing in the tank, made a bad start, and then obviously some really tight battles with Charles. So I was really glad to cross the finish line. But honestly, thank you so much to the whole team because it's been a long time coming to have this car beneath us, and I'm going to start off in a better way.
If you look at the results after the race, if you hadn't watched the race, you'd think, oh, Mercedes just had it easy. George just walked away with it. It wasn't quite like that, was it? And it was so nice for us as fans to see you guys fighting out there.
I'm glad you guys enjoyed it. It was, we had this suspicion that it was going to be a bit of a yo-yo effect. And as soon as one of us got in front, it just felt impossible to hold it. And obviously with this straight mode, we lose a lot of the front end on the car. So we're sort of just understeering a lot around these corners. So I'm sure the FIA are going to have to improve that a little bit because it was a bit sketchy, but yeah, made it in one piece and just glad to be 1-2.
You started the year as you had hoped, I'm sure. So congratulations.
Thank you.
Kimmy, that was a very up and down race, but congratulations on coming home P2, 1-2 for the team. How are you feeling?
Yeah, I mean, it was the best start we could have wished for. Unfortunately, the start was really bad and lost a lot of pace. I mean, a lot of places, and I find myself, that I had to recover. But overall, was a good race. The pace was very strong, especially at the end. And just looking forward to next week.
I think every time we watched the screen, you were overtaking another car. So it's nice to see in this new era that there is that opportunity to overtake.
Yeah, I mean, the racing was incredible. The first few laps, with the overtake is so powerful that it can, give a lot of action. So it was really good fun at the beginning. And now a bit of rest and looking forward to China.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Charles, First of all, thank you for making that race proper exciting with George. How was the car? How was the race? How is this new era of F1?
It was a very, very tricky race. I mean, honestly, at the start, I don't think anybody of us knew what to expect with the fights, with the energy, and then it's even more tricky for the overtakes to defend. You don't really know when your engine, your battery is going to cut in the straight. So while defending, there's massive speed differences. So it's been quite challenging, but I was happy to get out of this battle in first. Unfortunately, that didn't help us for the rest of the race, but it was a fun first part of the race. Then P3 is the best we could do today.
Yeah, that start was kind of what everyone expected from Ferrari, but you made the move on George in turn one. It looked like it was actually on the brakes rather than acceleration.
Yeah, and I think the person that is switching off the lights have been quite cheeky, because for the first start of the season with these cars to go so quick, lights off, was I think it took us everybody by surprise, and we're always very much on the limit with the power units. So I think that played a little bit in our hands, but it's part of the game. I mean,
I have to ask, without the virtual safety car, do you think you would have had an opportunity to fight George for the win?
I don't think so, but maybe I'm wrong. It looked like Mercedes maybe had a bit more pace than us today, but maybe not as much as what we saw yesterday, so that's a good thing, but I don't think we could have one.
Congrats, guys.
Jenson Button speaking to your top three, Russell, Antonelli and Charles Leclerc, as the pit lane starts to get awfully busy. Jenny Gow, what's the atmosphere like?
Yeah, Toto Wolff is just congratulating George Russell. They hid the drivers away from the crowd that are forming in the pit lane, so we couldn't see them. So this is Toto's first actual speaking to his drivers, who are both in front of him. When he came off the pit wall, it was actually the first man who congratulated him was Fred Vasseur at Ferrari. And they had a little chat walking down towards the pen, and he's talking to his drivers at the moment. But yes, jubilation for Mercedes, I think is the right word, as their press officer next to me is smiling very broadly and regretting the fact that he put on a black jumper. It's very hot.
It certainly is. What are we looking at? About 25 degrees air temperature, 35.8 degrees, but it's feeling a little hotter. The wind that we've had earlier looks like it's died down slightly. That was providing a nice breeze here in Albert Park, but 22 cars have been weaving their way underneath the trees, darting around this semi-permanent street circuit, and we have come to a close after 58 laps of running. But the Formula One season is just getting started. Mercedes have a clear advantage. They are the benchmark now, Mark, and many will be wanting to try and see how quickly they can develop. But how quickly can we expect to see change like this?
I think pretty quickly. I think that's going to be the nature of this season. You know, already there'll be huge developments in progress in the system, you know, in manufacturing. We may even see some new components coming in just a week's time in China, a few days' time, in fact, by the time we all get there. There won't be the huge upgrades, but there will be some things coming because production is ongoing. There's always stuff in the pipeline in Formula One. It's what makes it such an incredible, innovative sport. But look, there's so much learning, and they've gone through an entire Grand Prix weekend for the very first time. That's a massive amount of data, a massive amount of experience, and a massive amount of understanding of these packages that they simply didn't have beforehand.
Top three making the walk to the podium area now. Past some fans screaming George Russell's name as he takes victory here in Melbourne. His sixth career win extends his streak of 17 races now in the points and 35 races finished. I mean, he had a brilliant year last year. A car that wasn't capable for wins week in, week out, still managed to start inside the top six of every single Grand Prix bar one. He came into this Mercedes team second to Lewis Hamilton, but very quickly has really stepped into the shoes of Hamilton since his departure at Mercedes. He is team leader, and he has this air of authority about him now, George Russell.
Yeah, he does, and that'll be helped, I think, by the fact that he's got a very young teammate. I mean, Kimi Antonelli, we think, has got huge potential in front of him, but he's still a little bit rough around the edges, still got lots to learn, and that's to be expected at his very young age. George, I think, is taking that on. He's embracing that as a team leader. He's happy to sort of guide and help shape young Kimi Antonelli, and he'll be happy to do that as long as he's behind him. The moment he starts to creep up and starts to become a real threat and a challenge, I mean, I've been there before. Lewis Hamilton, Fernando Alonso, 2007. This can change very quickly.
I'll tell you what, we're just watching the cool-down room where the top three go and watch the highlights of the race. I did pick up on it, but we didn't see a proper replay of it. One of the concerns was going to be the chaos of the race start. Now, Liam Lawson in the Racing Bulls probably got the worst start of everybody on the grid. And Franco Colapinto came completely unsighted, and we are talking near millimetres avoided the Racing Bulls. That could have been a massive crash right at the start of this race. Luckily, Colapinto, quick reactions, avoided it, but I tell you what, I'm surprised we only had one of those incidences on the start.
Yeah, it was a worry. I think up and down the grid, a lot of people raised that as a potential concern. The speed differential, you heard Charles Leclerc talking about it, massive difference in speed at different points in the race. Jenny Gow has Toto Wolff downstairs.
I have. We're just going to make the slightly awkward walk back to the Mercedes garage, so we'll walk and talk. Amazing, well done, congratulations. That's the way you wanted it to start, isn't it?
Yeah, it's nice. 1 and 2, obviously, it couldn't go better, but it wasn't as easy as it looks at the end with the result, because the Ferraris were a tough competitor at the beginning.
What did you make of the chopping and changing between Ferrari and yourselves? Did you like that style of racing? How did you find it?
Yeah, I liked it because it was a little bit also the unknown. How well can you defend? How well can you attack? And it was pretty even Stevens between the 4 cars. So yeah, I enjoyed that.
The champagne's already poured next to you for the crew to come and celebrate. I just want to ask you, Championship Challenge, everyone's going to be talking about it. Are you back? Is Mercedes back?
I think we are back in the hunt. Whether at the end you win the championship or not, I would hope so. And maybe on paper it looks at the moment, but we're just after race 1. Ferrari was very strong, and so let's keep both feet on the ground. Hopefully we can fight.
Thank you so much. Well done, Toto.
There's the quote, Mercedes are back. Toto Wolff, team principal, speaking to Jen as he walks towards Parc Fermé, the area underneath the podium. The fan invasion begins as Charles Leclerc steps out with Kimi Antonelli, and race winner George Russell takes to the top step of the podium, your victor. And here we will have the British national anthem. The British and German national anthem ringing out for George Russell, your winner, and Mercedes, the winning constructor, as the trophies are handed out. George Russell receives it. It takes the shape of the old school Formula One steering wheel, and he receives it and jumps up in the air with 2 hands, raises it to his team, and then bows for the winner's medal, which is received round his neck. and elation for George Russell. Kimi Antonelli stands alongside in second, and Howell Thomas, the MD of Mercedes Powertrains and their high performance powertrains department, takes the trophy for the winning constructor. Jen, you're down there, talk us through it.
I am, and it's a very happy podium for Mercedes. As I said, the champagne is already poured for the team when they go back to the box, but right now they're huddled underneath the podium. The sun is glinting off the silverware that's presented to the drivers, and in just a few moments the champagne corks are going to fly and the champagne will be poured out. Now, Lando Norris last year had the idea to bang it on the floor, but George Russell does it differently. He just shakes it up and down. There is flares going off in the background and champagne mixed with sweat, my favourite combination, but the drivers are very much enjoying this. It's been a hard graft, not much of a break between last season and this season, and George Russell with Kimi Antonelli by his side and Charles Leclerc nailed that. Well done, George Russell and Mercedes.
Thanks, Jen. Formula One kickstarts for 2026, a new era, the biggest overhaul in regulations in the sport's history, and we're only just getting started. But for Mercedes and Ferrari, they're off on the right foot. What about our reigning world champion, though, Mark? Lando Norris, down in 5th spot.
Yeah, and that was the best result on the McLaren, McLaren's effort today, because his teammate Oscar Piastri didn't even make the start after spinning and crashing on the way to the grid. So McLaren have work to do, not only with reliability and some of those issues, but they're just not on the same pace level as Mercedes, the works team, despite having that same brilliant class-leading power unit. So they've got some work to do in understanding the power unit itself, but crucially they've got work to do with that car to make that handle and work better, to find any hope of getting closer to the works team up front.
And he finished in the end ahead of Max Verstappen, who did a great job in getting from the back of the grid to P6. But, we saw Hadjar in 3rd. If Verstappen had been up there as well for qualifying, which we fully expect him to have been, could that Red Bull have gotten into the mix with the Ferraris and the Mercedes today? Well,
I think that's one of the big unanswered questions. I would love to see a nice clean weekend from Verstappen. I think we can never discount Max Verstappen. As a driver, he brings so much performance to any package you put him in. But I think the fact that Hadjar was able to get at least onto the 2nd row, albeit some way behind in terms of lap time for the Mercedes, if you add in a couple of tenths, say, just from the Verstappen effect, that immediately brings him a bit closer. He's very good at working through a race weekend and a Grand Prix itself. So, look, it was a great display from him, coming through from the back of the field. I want to see him have a level pegging start with the likes of the Ferraris and the likes of Mercedes, and just see where their performance is really at.
Yeah, there's still a lot of unanswered questions heading into next week for the Chinese Grand Prix and the first sprint of the year as well. So a double dosage of racing. We'll have one practice session before we go straight into qualifying for the sprint on the Friday, and then the sprint race, followed by Grand Prix qualifying on the Saturday ahead of Grand Prix as normal on the Sunday. I think a couple of words for best of the rest, really, which ended up being the Haas of Ollie Behrman, 7th place. Good job from Behrman.
Really good job from Behrman, and another sign that Ferrari power unit is a good one. The two Ferraris were the best of the rest behind Mercedes. The fact that the Haas was able to compete and be at the front of the midfield, I think, is really, really good. Bodes well for them. And I think downstairs, Jenny's got another team principal. This time it's Zak Brown.
Yes, CEO of McLaren. Zak, obviously we spoke to you before the race, but now more considered. How do you feel the race went for you, and how do you get over the disappointment and cheer Oscar back up after that crash in the opening?
We've got work to do. That was 50 seconds behind. Lando did a great job in the race, and we've got work to do on our chassis and to understand how to get the best out of the power unit, because we're not able to replicate what we see others are doing. So there's some sort of knowledge based on how to maximize the performance that we don't yet fully understand, but we'll learn. It's early days.
And a few words about Oscar Piastri, obviously in front of his home fans. The curse of Australian drivers keeps on going, but what happened and what have you learned?
I've been on pit wall the whole time, so saw Oscar before the start of the race, but we'll have a chat now that the race is over.
Okay, thank you so much.
Cheers.
CEO Zak Brown there. CEO of Zak Brown, CEO of McLaren, Zak Brown, speaking to Jenny Gao there just after the close of the Grand Prix. Yeah, work to do for McLaren. Let's just look at some other good news stories. Arvid Lindblad, the 18-year-old born in Surrey but from Swedish and Indian heritage. He races under a British flag, so we are absolutely claiming him. Brilliant result for the British driver. 8th on debut in Formula One.
Yeah, and I think symptomatic of a brilliant weekend from start to finish. He's been really clean, he's been solid, he's been progressively working through the systems and just crucially not making mistakes. I loved seeing him battle against Max Verstappen in the mid part of that race. You know, Andrew Benson talked about his job was to, enable the 4-time world champion in the bigger sister Red Bull car to come through. Well, he didn't get that memo, and he fought wheel to wheel for a long period of time. So frustrated Verstappen, but I think, wowed the fans, and I was definitely one of those today.
And behind Arvid Lindblad was Gabriel Bortoletto, back for his second season in Formula One, but the first with the full Audi Works team. New car, new engine, new brand in Formula One, and a really great reward from what has been an impressive team actually so far from testing to get them 2 points to kickstart their campaign.
Yeah, it's not the same undertaking as the likes of Cadillac, who've literally started from scratch with everything, but let's take nothing away from the fact that Audi have come in and built their own power unit as well as the chassis. That is massive. We talk about how well Mercedes have done up at the front end of the field, but Audi are coming in fresh, doing this from scratch, having zero Formula One experience before. I think we've got to take give a huge amount of credit to them. They will of course be equally disappointed with the fact that Hülkenberg didn't make the start with some kind of technical problem. We don't know exactly what that is yet, but I think to take points from your first Grand Prix as Audi, I think they'll take that.
Yeah, absolutely. And stealing the final point was Pierre Gasly's Alpine, which I think, is a bit of a surprise for us. He was in a fierce fight with Esteban Ocon, who just missed out. But Gasly, with an Alpine team that have come in quite disappointed, actually, compared to what they thought their performance might have been after testing.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing. They've switched to a Mercedes power unit. We can clearly see that that's the class of the field. We've seen how well it can be operated. It's given them a step forward from where they were last year, which was really floundering at the back. But coming into the weekend, they've kind of been disappointing. So they've been towards the back of that midfield pack. So I guess to sneak a point towards the end, it's midway through that race, it looked like both of the Alpine drivers were absolutely nowhere. So to sneak a point, I think there's a glimmer of hope for them, some tiny amount of positivity from what otherwise would be a difficult start to the season.
Yeah, absolutely. And that was your top 10. You mentioned Cadillac there. I think really impressive for Sergio Perez to finish the race in 16th. We didn't see Valtteri Bottas complete the Grand Prix. He had to retire.
Yeah, and just getting one car to the finish is massive for them, because not only is it an achievement, it is a huge amount of learning. Getting through your first Grand Prix weekend, it's not just about the car and the technology, it's about the systems, the whole operations procedure, both here at the track, plus back at their base, with all of the hundreds of people that contribute to what goes into a race weekend. This is the first time they've all done it for real, so just getting that feather in your cap is a giant step forward.
Right, we're going to be with you for a few more minutes just to conclude all the happenings here from the first race of the year, but the track being invaded by the fans who have had the gates opened and are now being released onto the circuit. The drivers making their way to the interview pen as the sun still shines brightly in the blue skies above us here at Albert Park. We've set you up hopefully for a busy day here on 5 Live. Jeanette Quatchi and Stefan Power will be here for Sunday breakfast from about 7 o'clock. Colin Murray on from 10. And I do believe our very own Jenny Gao will be making an appearance on that show. Then we're building up to the day's FA Cup football action on 5 Live Sport with Steve Crossman from midday. 1:30 live commentary of Port Vale v Sunderland in the 5th round of the FA Cup. Then at 4:30 our attention turns to Leeds United against Norwich City. Let's come back to Audi, because hopefully we're going to be hearing from their team principal Jonathan Wheatley in a few moments time, and I'll tell you what, I think Jenny might have actually found him.
I have found him. Jonathan, congratulations, well done, team principal of Audi. Not a bad way to start with one car. Let's focus on the positives right now. P9 for Gabby Bortoletto, amazing.
Yeah, if you look at our run through the weekend, if you'd have said, I think I said earlier that we could be, qualify where we did and finish in P9 in our first ever race, I'd have snatched your hand off. So look, There's so much work gone into building this team, so much work at the factories in Neuburg, Hinwil, the work in Bicester, Mattia and the technical team, James and Stefan Dreyer. I mean, I could stand here naming people all day long. What we've achieved.
Please don't. I know.
No, I know. what we've achieved and where we are is incredible.
Amazing. And a word about the racing. What did you make of it?
Well, I think we got a motor race at the beginning there. We had a lot of overtaking. It's interesting, this energy battle. An overtake that looks like you've left somebody for dead, then two corners later happens the other way round. Those eagle-eyed would have seen that Lindblad and Gabby, the last few laps, that was again a bit of an energy race. So look, there's a lot to learn about these cars. We're at the very early stages of this set of technical regulations. But look, we got some racing today.
Exactly. And just a word, Nico Hülkenberg, what happened to the car? Have you got to the bottom of it?
Well, I think the trouble with telling you what happened is that we lost telemetry, so we lost our eyes on the car on the way to the grid, and the first time we knew we had a problem is when he stopped. So you can imagine, you don't have much time. We had a huge amount of ideas about what could have happened, but we couldn't actually get it fixed before the race. Honestly, I don't think we'll know what actually happened for another couple of hours.
That makes it difficult, doesn't it? And thoughts ahead of China. That's the next race in just a week's time. It comes around fast, doesn't it?
Well, I think breathe tonight, take everything in for a second, try to enjoy the moment. It's a bit of a yin and yang day for us today, but pit crew performed well, the team performed well. I think we've entertained the fans and we've made ourselves known as the Audi Revolut Formula 1 team.
Well done. Thank you so much, Jonathan. Go and have a glass of champagne.
Thank you, Jenny. Nice to see you.
Jonathan Wheatley there catching up with Jenny Gow. You know what, he's right. We did see overtaking. We had a bit of a motor race. There were elements of it that were different and new. It's the first race of the year, and you know what? We always complain when we get a race that we don't see many overtakes and the winner just storms off into the distance. We didn't really have that today.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. I think, it's easy to criticise something that's brand new, that we're not familiar with. It's unknown, it's unfamiliar. So, that's often the natural reaction that people have. It's disappointing that it's often that way, but I think let's keep an open mind. We did get some good racing. It is completely different to what we're used to, and that's going to be the thing that not only fans, but the teams and the drivers themselves have got to get used to. But look, if we do get used to it, and we get more of this, and we figure out ways to sort of optimise how best to go racing with this set of regulations, I think there's no reason why we can't see something that's really entertaining. On the other side of that, I think there are still a number of questions to be answered. I think there are a number of things that potentially could be tweaked in these regulations to enhance. There are potentially some concerns around safety with closing speeds. And as we talked about earlier on, giving as much information to enable everybody watching and listening to have as best an understanding of what's going on is going to mean that those who are fans of this sport have a clearer picture of what's going on behind the wheel.
Now, a new thing for me this year, I have to write some BBC Sport articles. I've got to rate drivers, so I'm going to cheat and ask for some help. Any 10 out of 10s out there today, Mark?
I don't think there's any such thing as a 10 out of 10. No, I mean, look, it's going to be very difficult to look beyond George Russell as the best performance, but he also had the best car, so you have to sort of caveat that by saying he had a potentially easier job than those who were really fighting the packages that they had. So look, you can't take anything away from George. He delivered exactly what he needed to do with what he had around him. But I think you can look at Verstappen and say, look, he did incredibly to fight his way through the field. And some of those younger drivers you've mentioned on their debuts, also brilliant. So I know that doesn't help you in the slightest to give anybody a number out of 10, but that's my input.
Eddie, what about a 0? Are we allowed to award a 0 out of 10? Or not applicable?
They at least all turned up.
Well, true. I mean, you have to look at someone like Stroll and go, well, fair play. At least you got some laps in at the end of the day. But, I'm just seeing more and more replays of Franco Colapinto doing an expert job of avoiding Liam Lawson's slow racing bulls at the start. That really could have been a catastrophic crash. So, Colapinto's going to earn a couple of points from me on that one then, at the very least. Look, that just about brings us to a close for the Formula One here in Australia at Albert Park in Melbourne. Thank you for your company. Thank you to Jenny. Thank you to Andrew and Mark. We're going to be discussing all of this as well, and the first race of the season and the outpouring from it on our Checker Flag podcast in sound and vision, available on BBC Sounds and on YouTube and iPlayer. So do make sure you have a look for that a little later on. But the new era is up and running in Formula One. New cars, new teams, new drivers, new circuits as well, ahead of 23 races remaining in this Formula One season, and we're only just getting started. Thank you for your company. This has been an IMG production for BBC Radio 5 Live. 5 Live Boxing with Steve Bunce follows us. That's after the latest BBC News with Beth Ann Holmes.
The voice of the UK.